Hey, y'all. What's up, dudes?
What's up?
Happy Sunday.
Happy mother effing Sunday.
So did you guys see Dungeons and Dragons? What is that?
It's a tiger backpacking.
We're not doing a samurai movie.
Wait, hold on.
I think it's kind of Dungeons
Why did you wear that?
Wait, man, show that again. What is it? Oh, okay.
Oh, Columbia?
That's cute.
Okay. You guys want to see what I'm wearing? Here.
Yeah. Take it off.
The heck is that?
Wait, show it off again, Shark. There we go.
Are you drinking out of
badge of honor? Am I?
What do we have today? Do we have anybody?
I got my No. I don't have a ranked mug because we're doing a nerdy thing tonight. So I figured I would just go back to the nerdy thing.
Who do we have tonight? What am I drinking?
Checkered shirt on.
This is what I've been wearing all day, honestly. since
we're gonna bring in a couple of minutes. We're gonna bring in an old friend of ours, but let's an old friend. Let me just do my. He can sit in the green room while I do my opener, and we'll see him shaking his head or not. Probably shaking his head. I think he's a big fan of this movie. That's why he's here tonight. But let's just cut to the quick review. Actually, wait, no, Nance, real quick. Let's just pop up the members and just pick one.
There we go.
Gritty Manor.
Pick one.
Barrel Rider 26.
You can't pick all of them. You have to just pick one of them.
What about K1? Because we played a really bad prank on him.
How about K1? Because K1's the only one who figured out it was April Fool's.
He was
the only one. Yeah, it's K1.
Junius Jones. I like that.
To K1. Cheers to K1.
K1.
Cheers.
Well, all these guys at the end got the gift memberships during the excellent
How
video.
dare well, SB's the first to comment, so here's to SB.
K1 says he got farted on. Yeah. K1, did you like it though? Be honest. Did you enjoy that video? It was too much fun to make. As embarrassing as it is that will always live on the internet forever. What are you gonna do? We'll later we'll talk about why we made that, because it's not the greatest.
It's not just April Fools.
Look at the thumbnail, you'll know why. But it was somebody sent us a really fun idea, so we just decided to do it. Good. K1 says he laughed his ass off. Fantastic.
Good.
Nans, I'm gonna stop clicking comments. I'll leave it to you.
Do it.
Anyway, let's do a real quick review, and then we'll bring our buddy in, because we've got two D&D nerds here tonight. One in the wings, and then McCurdy. Nans, I don't think you've ever played anything.
I wouldn't say I'm a nerd. I wouldn't say I'm.
Oh, whatever. Just for the sake of everybody watching, you are.
I've never played it. I've
played
curious.
D&D multiple
My
times.
brother has played it.
Now I mean, I've always wanted to play it.
Slightly more aware about it than you are, but maybe McCurdy knows more.
I will play it someday. I am determined.
Yeah, in the ranking, Jeff, he's gonna know the
ranking
most.
number one.
He's the number one
celebrity whose name we weren't going to say for no reason at all. Anyway, okay, real quick, Chucky Rants review. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves is one of those hit and miss movies. It'll get a big laugh and then a flat line. It'll get really creative and interesting and then drop off for a few scenes. Don't get me wrong, I like this movie in a guilty pleasure sort of way, but I'll always save praise for the stuff that'll last. And this movie simply won't, unless you're like really plugged into that stuff. Why? Because it suffers from the general nihilistic malaise that plagues today's movies that don't have the balls nor the talent to inject any meaning. The obvious withholding of romance, for example. Are we all so jaded that Hollywood is scared to show two people getting together in a classically romantic way? There are multiple couples in this movie and nobody gets together. Only one of them verbally consents to get together at a later time. It's like watching Friendzone the movie. I get that it's a fantasy, but that's all the more reason to inject a little humanity so that it's not just a bunch of weirdos throwing magic around. We need a little humanity in our stories because, we're human. And I know you guys are probably going to say, well, it's just a fantasy movie. It's just meant to be fun. But that's all the more reason for me to be like, I know, but wouldn't you rather have the payoff to stuff that is teased, right? It's like the whole time. It's like these people are going to get together. They're going to get together. And then there's nothing because it's like they're afraid to show two people fall in love anymore. Like it's a bad thing. And I am Grandpa Chucky Rants. But I'm going to be a broken record with stuff like this because it's always going to be a better movie. And the challenge is to find how to do that without being cliched. And instead of facing the cliche in an original way, they just throw it out the window and pretend like that's enough. And it's just inhuman to me. But McCurdy, before you get going, let's bring Jeff in.
Yay, Jeff.
Yay. What's up, dude?
Not much. I even brought my D20. I don't know how we.
There we go.
I was shocked there
Yes.
was no dice in the movie.
There was a board. There was a board at one point, right?
The game is not a board.
Well, there
Yeah,
was
Charlie,
there was
you
a
idiot.
surface with don't I mean you use stuff. There's a tabletop to the
Charlie,
game.
just
There can be.
just shut up.
I will shut up for you guys. But anyway,
Shut
Jeff
up.
Jeff
Got my
Jeff
D20 too.
streamed with us well over a year ago.
Eons ago.
And
I
Jeff
was
was
on
in
the
the
very
first
first
episode of the first Dr.
On.
No episode. Never showed up on camera because of Zoom, of Zoom's shortcomings. But what's
Jeff,
Jeff,
what's
can
going
you
on,
turn
dude?
your gain up?
Can you not hear me that well?
Yeah, you're pretty quiet for me.
That's weird.
Also,
That's
Jeff,
better.
do I
That's a
look-
little too loud, but
do I look like Orange Man? We want your vote on this.
A little bit.
A little, because Nans is like a lot of bit. Is it a little bit or a lot of bit?
That keeps it real. I will tell you when you're orange.
Yeah, but
Pretty
am I
well.
orange or am I too orange? There's a big difference.
Too orange.
Okay, I've been tanning a lot lately. Okay, I didn't want
That's a
anybody
lie.
to know, but anyway, so Jeff's here because I mean, judging from that background, he literally has a sword right there. He knows a thing or two about D&D.
Sword there. I have a sword here.
Yes, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Shield there. Got a bunch
I don't think any of us had anything to wear. Like I don't have a tunic. I mean, McCurdy, you don't even have a fun something.
I don't have. I'm a nerd of a lot of stuff, but I don't really own a lot of memorabilia. Not even James Bond.
Can't even say memorabilia.
Oh my God, Nance! Jesus fucking Christ!
Anyway.
I have so much shit around my house. Like that's just a small percentage of what's around me right
That
now
is
in my
true.
basement.
Yeah, I don't.
that
I
is
don't
very
waste my
true.
money on that shit. I got James Bond. This is my James Bond thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, McCurdy, teach us things.
Teach us things.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I should do that.
And then if he says something inaccurate, Jeff, just step in with your 20-sided die.
Jeff may have to correct me on some D&D stuff because
Like, what is
there's
a nat
lot.
20?
Nat 20 is when you roll a dice and it naturally is a 20. It goes to the max.
20.
Right there.
There's
Oh.
a
Is
Is
lot
there
more.
a non-nat
Yeah.
20? Like you roll two dice?
Yeah,
and
if you roll two 20s, if you had to roll a D20 twice and then you added those numbers, that would not be a natural 20.
Yeah.
Oh, so McCurdy does know some stuff.
Because
I know stuff.
your character can
Nerd off.
That's
All right, let's talk about it, boys. We got Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. Let's do a brief history of D&D and the rules.
Was it Marlon Wayne? We're not talking about that one today.
We'll get to that. Just hold your horses, Jeff. I promise we will talk about Marlon Wayne's.
Real quick though, anybody watching? Is this is Jeff still super low? His voice is
little
so
low.
quiet.
I've been trying to figure out.
How far from the mic are you?
He's
Maybe
very
I can talk
close.
like this, really close. But that's like I'm going to eat the microphone if I do that.
Yeah, I guess your audio is coming from your mic. It almost sounds like it's set to your desktop mic. But anyway, McCurdy, just go.
All right. No worries. Okay, so Dungeons and Dragons, or as fans and players like to call it, D&D, is a tabletop role-playing game that was created by Gary Gygax. Yeah, his name's Gary Gygax. It's a
Wow.
thing. Dave Arneson in the mid-70s. The slimmed-down version of this game Jeff, you can tell me, you can add to this once I finish this. But the slimmed down version of this game, Charlie, is you have a dungeon master and you have players. The dungeon master or DM oversees the game, essentially creates the quests, conflicts, and plays NPC characters, non-playable characters. The players would come across in the game. The DM can use pre-written quests from manuals and books or create their own. Players, on the other hand, of the game create characters, will have a race and a class, much like the characters in this film. You have humans, elves, tieflings, and then of course you have classes like fighter, wizard, clerics, bards, etc. And then they will just, as you're playing the game, you'll discuss strategies among yourselves to figure out what to do next. And then in the game, players will come up against challenges. The DM will ask for an ability check, and so that's usually why you have the D20. There are other dice in the game, but you will do some kind of ability check based off what is on your player sheet, which I have here. This is one of my old characters. I haven't played in a long time, so you have a player sheet like that.
Is that blank?
No, it's got stuff on it. It's just penciled.
Okay.
It's just not very. It's washed out, as you would like to call it.
So that's an old adventure.
Well, it's not an adventure. That would be your character. So you would have you could write a character, and you could go to another friend's house and play the same character with your character sheet.
Quick question for the both of you: what is the longest game you ever
I think
had?
it's still. Oh, they have ever had it.
Probably 4 hours, maybe. I mean,
it's like running like total like campaign. Or
Yeah, can't they go on for weeks?
You could play
years.
Yeah,
you could play forever. Yeah, I mean,
you did one for years.
Yeah, I've done one for years as
adventure
well.
for years.
Yeah,
And then there's one winner, or is it the team
There's
wins?
no winner. You're like your collaboration.
Charlie, the best way to explain it is: have you ever played the game Fallout or any RPG movie? Or RGB game, right?
Open world.
Open world game.
RGB.
He's playing The Witcher
RGB colors.
currently. I don't know
Blue
how
and
far
green.
along he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just Pokemon.
RPG. Sorry,
Pokemon.
any game like that, right?
Zelda.
You can continue playing that game forever. You could continue playing Zelda forever and collecting everything in the game. That's very much what Dungeons and Dragons is like there are quests that you can complete. Now, like, yeah, when you talk about a quest, it might be, we're going to go do this dungeon. There's some kind of thing that they've created, but you might continue that adventure on another day and be like, okay, we're going to come back and then we'll start from where we left off and then continue on. And but you could, DM might have another thing.
It's whatever you guys want to do, right? So you could do every night you get together as a separate adventure.
Yeah.
Or you're all the same character going on for eternity, right? There could be no cap to it, and
There's
just keep
people out there who's had games going on for like decades. Like
I googled it. There's a Canadian who has hosted a game that's gone on for 40 years now.
Yeah. Okay.
But you could have a character that dies, and then you have to create a new character and start from scratch, but then come back into the same game that you were playing.
Jeff,
with your
have
friends.
you DM'd? What if it'd be sweet if we could all live stream like a short
I've run
adventure
a few
someday.
games. I've run games that I like created from scratch. Like I did all the whole stories myself, like characters and everything. And then I've done games where I just got like pre-made ones online and just did like really basic, simple ones. Like, all right, you guys are all show up in a pub. What do you want to do? And I just leave it open like that, and then just kind of decide from there. Where there are ones like you are on an epic journey to stop this evil presence things, and make Lord of the Rings. Like Lord of the Rings is a good example of how you can feel about what must look like. Like that's what I always like to go to.
But okay, the next question then. The next question, and really the only one that I presented McCurdy with after watching the movie, because at the end, it says Hasbro. Has it always been Hasbro?
Yeah, no, it hasn't always been. Okay, so
Hasbro.
Let me explain this. Let me explain this part.
Tell me.
Shut up, and I'll tell you.
I'm gonna guess yes.
Shut up. Okay, so D&D is owned by Hasbro Toys, and it was previously owned by Wizards of the Coast, which is the same company that owns Magic the Gathering. It's a card game. They basically sell. This is the player's handbook. So this is one of the items in the 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons. There have been multiple editions of D&D over the years. Some of the pictures that I have are the original edition, the 2nd edition, 3rd edition. So there have been multiple editions. Each edition has created new rules, maybe added new characters, different ways of play. So the game has changed over the years. It hasn't stayed.
Okay, there's a part 2 to my question. There's a part 2. The part 2 is, why do I need a gaming company for this game? Has this game, did it start as something that was kind of, it had an instruction manual, but now it has transcended, and
And
now
what
it's
you
just something that anybody can do with a piece of paper and
My
imagination?
guess is
can't
that
do-
it's become more accessible.
Jeff is
wanna
nodding.
say
I
there's
want to
more
hear what Jeff has to
books
say.
No, wait. I can
Jeff,
explain though.
what is the answer to that question?
I mean, D&D, like I said, the editions have changed. Like the beginning, it was just simple, like here's a simple book with all the rules of it, and then it became a company that makes multiple games, everything. There's different editions with new additional rules, new characters you can play as, new like items you can purchase. And it's just changed. And obviously, it's bigger now, and there's lots of other games that are like D&D. Like there's Pathfinder, which is like D&D liked for a lot of people, where it's a
I
little
was
more.
going to mention Pathfinder because originally at one point they made version 3 or whatever it was, edition, the third edition, and they changed the rules. Apparently, at one point in time, Wizards was like, they trademarked using a D20 in any game for some reason, and then that rule got lifted. And so then Pathfinder, which was it was a version of D&D that was made by another company. They basically took basically the same rules, and created a new version of D&D, but called it Pathfinder. They still are able to make money and trademark their stuff based off the artwork that are in the books, as well as selling the books. And like, that's the thing, Charlie, is like, you're like, oh, you could just play it with a piece of paper. But like, as you're going through these books, there's a lot of diagrams and things for how much does a spell cost? How much is, what's the hit points on a sword?
I assume that's to help you, right? But the guy who's been going on for 40 years, he probably left those
might have
books
been using
behind, right?
Well,
Those books are gone for him, right?
He probably is still using those books because there's a lot of reference material that you still have to use. So it is a game that you can't just like, oh, let's just play D&D. Let's just do it. Like, there's probably like maybe a few things you could find online to play.
So if anything, he probably has more books because he's abiding by more and more and more rules.
Unless he's continued the game, and unless he's been
think about it.
Like guidelines, yeah.
So think of guidelines.
It is
like,
guidelines.
Because when I ran D&D, there's times I would improvise things. I had a DM when I first was playing D&D back in college. He made up weapons and items for people. He made up creatures. He made up gameplay that wasn't in the rule books. That's the nice thing about the rule, like with D&D, the fact that it's not like a video game where you're stuck to the machine, what the machine can physically show you and handle. D&D, you can make up a lot of it. Just use the rules as like general guides of like, all right, your stats and attacks and that kind of parts. But after that, interactions, items you can have, monsters you can fight, you can do whatever the hell you want. I've played sci-fi versions of D&D where you're in space traveling around.
Yeah,
so
there's other, and there are other.
But is there an official? Is that an official version from, I guess, what would now be Hasbro? Or
there are other companies, there are other gaming companies that make different. Essentially, they're just different role playing games. So there's one called there's a Call of Cthulhu game that's all based off H.P. Lovecraft stories. There's like a space themed version. It's not, but they're not. They're not D&D. It's just they are their own separate thing. They have maybe their own separate rules, and they're slightly variations of basically what D&D has been. So
yeah, D&D was just like what helped start it and kind of give a nice little like template to how to create these role play games for people.
Okay. Yeah,
it was just like the original role play game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is kind of a very general sense of what D&D is. And then let's move on. We'll move on to our next little bit. Now, this isn't the first
there's
film.
not some crazy Dungeons and Dragons super fans that are gonna totally roast us.
Sure, but I welcome them to
educate
invite me to.
Don't yell at us.
You want to learn a little bit
right
more
now, we
about
could be
what
doing a live
D&D is.
stream of a session. I would have a lot of fun. I think that would be.
Yeah, we should do that.
There's something I did.
Jeff
I
has
didn't do a
invited me in
slide.
the past, and then he has babies, and then that invitation goes away. So.
Then I haven't, I didn't add
character.
this to this, but like there have been plenty of celebrities who play D&D, and it's very much like a storytelling type of game. There's a lot of storytelling elements to it. So so there are a lot of celebrities that are huge fans of playing D&D, and so it's kind of like an unkept secret. Like Vin Diesel is a huge fan of D&D.
Joe Manganiello, is that how you say his last name?
Yeah, there's a lot of really famous.
I gotta imagine Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
Yep,
Henry
he is.
Cavill, probably,
Yeah.
tons of people.
Dan Harmon had a
It's
show.
hip to be a nerd now, you
I'll say
know.
Dan Harmon had a whole show. It was basically he was using Pathfinder in his show, but it was like a stage show he did with friends of D&D, and it was like they would get like a guest star come on with them, but the rest of the people were just like regular characters. They would play their characters throughout, and it was just watching improv.
Is this that YouTube show? Is that what you're talking about?
So there's a show called
I've watched
Critical
some of that.
Role. Yeah, there's a show called Critical Role, and they created their own characters. Well, then they took those characters and they made that off as an Amazon show called Vox Machina. And it's basically a D&D adventure story based off of their own adventures playing D&D, or Pathfinder in this case.
Yeah.
SB says Vince Vaughn is a big one. So
yeah. So there's all these tons of celebrities that are huge fans of D&D. So quickly, we got to talk about. So this is not the first D&D, and this whole month, by the way, has all been sequels, and this is like the first technically just remake of. So this whole month's been franchises for our whole month of March.
Yeah, the whole year is going to be a
whole
lot
year
of that.
But prior to this film, there was a failed D&D film from 2000 that starred Justin Whalen, best known for the adventures of Lois and Clark. Superman. I think it's like Superman Adventures of Lois Clark, whatever.
Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman.
Yeah,
he's Jimmy Olsen.
Jimmy Olsen in that, and then Marlon Wayans, and also Jeremy Irons is in that movie as well. Like those are kind of the highlights as far as the cast goes.
I think he's the highlight, right? He's just
Jeremy
hamming
Irons,
it up.
I
haven't seen the movie, but I've seen him in it.
Yeah.
You know.
They made 2 sequels to that movie. So even though it was a failure, they made 2 direct TV sequels. I think one of the cast members from the movie ended up having a part in one of the sequels. So there was D&D Wrath of the Dragon God and D&D The Book of the Vile Darkness. And I think they both may have played on Sci-Fi or went straight to DVD.
Yeah, that's how they were. They're like straight
to
DVD.
Not super well known.
What about the cartoon show?
Jeff, you haven't been here for a while.
Oh my
God.
Process.
There's a process. You gotta wait. Hold your horses. You're like,
don't worry, Jeff. I do it all the time.
What is this like? This is like what was in Big Lebowski. You're like a child wondering. You just don't know.
McCurdy really is embodying Scott. It's like Scott's spirit has gone into McCurdy. Scott says that all the time.
Shut up!
Speaking of Scott, there he is. He says, "Holy crap, it's Jeff."
Scott can't spell. McCurdy can't talk.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah, match made in heaven.
Great.
Go ahead, sir.
All of you all. Okay.
Continue.
I guess I'll continue.
Is that like a brain creature like we get in this movie?
Which is? Are you talking about this thing?
Yeah, in the top, in the middle of the poster on the left.
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Looks like a brain.
I have no idea.
That's a dragon.
There's like a dragon on the top.
The poster on the left.
Yeah.
It's a dragon.
Looks like a brain to me.
Yeah, you got to zoom out. You got to zoom out.
Well, there were
okay. Are
brain
creatures a thing, or is that just in this movie?
There's lots of creatures.
There's tons
of creatures.
But is there a brain creature?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there is a brain creature. I don't know what the name is. Yeah.
Okay. It's a fun joke. It's a fun joke.
All right. So let's talk about all the directing, the writing, all that good stuff. So this movie is directed and written by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, with Michael Giglio and story by Chris McKay. So Michael Giglio was one of the other writers. I decided just not to make a slide for him because it's just main thing is the directors, because they also wrote this movie. Okay. So Goldstein and Daly wrote and directed this film. Michael Giglio also shares a writing credit with the story by Chris McKay. You might know his name from the Tomorrow War, Lego Batman movie, the Lego movie, and then also Robot Chicken. Goldstein and Daly met on the Gina Davis show, and then they wrote together and did such films as Horrible Bosses, Spider-Man Homecoming, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, and then they directed their first film was together was the Vacation reboot, which I believe they also wrote, and then they also directed the movie Game Night with Jason Bateman. They were originally slated to direct the new Flash movie that is going to be coming out later this year, but they ended up leaving that project. They do have a story
because all of that's a shit show.
Yeah. Well, you can.
Everybody, like we said a couple weeks ago, everybody's jumping off that DC ship, so not a big surprise there.
That movie's had a lot of development hell issues.
Yeah.
So there's probably a lot there why they left. but they still have a story by credit on that movie. And then also you probably recognize Daly from Freaks and Geeks. Like that's what I was like.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, that guy looks
The
familiar.
moment I saw that name, after the movie was done, I was like, cool, because
I recognize him from Waiting. That Ryan Reynolds.
yeah. He's like the new.
He's the new guy.
Waiter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who freaks out on everybody. Yeah.
So
But yeah,
let's
Freaks
get
and Geeks is one of those where I watched that. I think I started watching that right when I got to LA, and I remember my reaction being, "Holy shit! I can't believe I missed this show for so long." That show perfectly encapsulates all of us in going through school. I was like, "Wow, our whole friend group was expansive, but it was cleaved in the middle, where it was literally the freaks and the geeks." And the freaks would go off and do drugs all weekend, and we would go off and play video games. Somehow not D&D, but we would play video games in somebody's basement, because who needs D&D when you have video games? So the freaks would go off and do their thing. The geeks would go off and do their thing. And then during the week, we'd all get back together and we would all hang out as one. And the freaks would talk about how so-and-so was so tripped out on acid that they all freaked out. And they all ran away from a lamppost because they thought it was a knight. Right? Like they thought it was a goddess or something. And then we'd be like, yeah, we played Halo for like 2 days straight in somebody's basement, like that. And then we would just rinse and repeat that. And then watching Freaks and Geeks, I was like, holy shit, that's that story, but in the 80s. So, anytime John Francis Daly pops up,
I was literally telling my wife about how like our friends groups were separate. Like sometime in high school, we kind of started to separate, and there was.
You do drugs? Come over to the Freaks.
Well, like, it wasn't just drugs. It was like you were into music. Like it was mostly like, oh, you're into punk music. We're doing punk bands and that.
Mm-hmm.
And drugs was involved as well. And then there was you guys into lacrosse and video games, and it was just like this thing that just separated.
Like
and
on the weekends we'd separate. During the week,
but I remember,
we'd come back together.
I remember bouncing back and forth between you guys because I would be like hanging out with these guys and then come and see what you guys were up to. And obviously,
whenever you'd be in rehab, you'd come play video games.
Of course, that's exactly.
Well, now you're gonna have to upload all the video game club videos.
Video game club videos.
Yeah, maybe I'll play one tonight. While McCurdy keeps going, I'll find one.
Yeah,
and play that.
The one back of me just screaming Mortal Kombat.
all that stuff. All right. So just getting to the actors in this movie real quick. We've got Chris Pine. We got Chris Pine.
Oh God, Chris Pine.
It's the whiskey
good guy.
Man.
Good
Chris
guy.
Pine plays Edgin Jarvis. He's a human bard. It's again like that's a character in a class and a race in the game of D&D. He's a human bard. And from Star Trek and Wonder Woman, and my favorite's probably Hell or High Water. He's
yes,
great. He's in movies. He's great.
He's in Horrible Bosses too.
He's also in horror. I didn't see that one, but yeah, he's in that.
He's in the second one because then the guys who directed this one, they wrote that movie.
They did the story. They had a story by credit. They didn't write it. But yeah, they have a story by credit on the second one. Yeah. Then we got Michelle Rodriguez. She plays Holga Kilgore, a human barbarian. From Fast and Furious, Avatar, Lost. She basically plays a type, and that usually means mean girl in tank top. Like every movie, she has to be in a tank top.
Yeah,
and this movie, like every movie she's in usually some kind of wife beater. It's great.
Yep.
That's her character. That's who she is now. We got Justice Smith plays Simon Amar. Jeff, did you ever play a character, play against or read something about a character named Elminister Amar? Because apparently the character in this movie that is his great whatever, that's a character in D&D, which I was not aware of.
Like deep D&D lore. I don't
know all the lore.
I'm more used to playing games my friends would write down.
And they kind of make things up. Yeah. So, but his character in this movie is based off of a character specifically from the games. You know him best from Detective Pikachu and the second Jurassic World movie, which is not.
I thought
really
he was in that
good.
one.
Oh, Jurassic
Yeah.
World Fallen Kingdom, or The Floor is Lava. That's why I always.
Yeah, that one's fun. It's great. And then we've got Sophie Lillis.
Oh, it. Okay.
Yeah, so she
Yeah.
plays Doric, a tiefling druid, wild shape as they call it in this movie. You know her from It. And Charlie, just so you're aware, she's 21. I just want to let you know that.
I
just wanted you to know that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Because I figured
I
you
don't
want to
know
know.
why you would tell me that.
I don't
but
know why I would
appreciate
tell
it.
you that. I feel disgusting telling you this on a
You
television,
legally,
like on
legally
live.
obligated to tell us this.
I felt like Charlie wanted to know.
I understood watching it that I just had to appreciate beauty, but 21 you say. I gotta go.
He's 21. That's awful. But no, I think her look and everything's very elf-like or very impish-like, and I think it really works for the
Yeah,
character.
getting ahead of
Like,
ourselves though. Was she
Let's-
just really flat and uninterested in this movie? She just didn't seem like she cared. Was she trying to play a
a little
character
more
who
stoic
wouldn't care,
character.
or did she actually just not give a shit about this movie? There just wasn't any.
You apparently hated this
Brightness.
movie, so
I didn't. Hey, I said in
I
that
was-
intro,
I was gonna
don't
save
hate
it
this
for
movie.
my Nan's reacts, but
well, let's wait. No,
Save
hold on.
it.
think-
Let's
David,
wait
you
for
have an
your
entire
Let's
portion
save it.
yourself. We'll
Yeah.
give it to you.
Jeff
Shut
doesn't
the
even get
fuck
that.
up, Nance.
Shut up.
No, McCurdy needs to be doing that because McCurdy is Scott now.
Where's
Shut
my
the.
hat?
You want to hear
need a
my
hat.
opinion, Nance? Shut the fuck up.
Okay, I didn't fuck this name up. It's Reggae is his name. That's how you say his name is Reggae.
Reggae.
Reggae Jean Page. That's how you say his name. He plays what's this character's name though? His character is Zenix Yendar. He plays a Thay
Okay.
paladin. So just so you're aware, when you play D&D, you have to choose what your alignment is as your character, which means like, are you chaotic good? Are you lawful evil? Are you, those kinds of things. And you probably have seen those things online. Like for instance, the
charts.
Joker's chaotic evil, right? So when you play D&D, if you play as a paladin, which is like a very strong armored fighter, kind of what you would think of like a heroic fantasy character to be, like Aragorn, you have to play as lawful good. And lawful good characters aren't as fun because they can't do mischievous things. And so that's also fun with this character. And
So
I think
so if you know that going into it, you understand why he's
Yeah.
basically Dave Bautista
When she's-
in
when- yeah.
Galaxy.
yeah,
Guardians
when
of the Galaxy.
when
Like,
Michelle Rodriguez
he's
is like
he's so good that he can't even understand sarcasm.
Yeah,
or-
she's like,
yeah.
you're not fun, are you? And like
Yeah.
that's the joke.
That's a paladin. That's like exactly.
Yeah,
what it
that's
is. Like,
specifically-
paladin.
Yeah,
So
which
yeah,
I
he's-
understood inherently without knowing D&D rules. I'm going to be
Yeah.
pointing that out all night.
You
that
knew
just,
the
like,
cliche. It was
I-
easy enough to understand the cliche of like the
Yeah.
heroic stoic character. That's what he plays. He's best
funny.
known for Bridgerton, which is a show on Netflix that a lot of women seem to love. There's also a possibility that he could be a potential candidate for the next James Bond. We don't know yet, so there's that.
Okay.
And he was also in this movie called Mortal Engines, directed. I think it wasn't that directed by your favorite director, Charlie. Wasn't that? Lord
it
of
had
the
a
Rings?
cool trailer, but I wonder
No,
if
he
it's...
actually-
Mortal Engines? No, he
turned
produced
out
it.
to
He
be
produced it. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was if I remember correctly, it was his. I think it was the if you watch the making of Lord of the Rings, he's all over it. It was one of the storyboard artists, I think, who
Oh, okay.
directed that. But I don't
I
think
know
the
that was
movie
based
did
off
well.
a book or something, but he was in
Yeah.
that. He was in that movie as well. I didn't see it.
Okay.
He was in that movie.
Okay.
And then next up, we've got Hugh Grant, who's a human
If
rogue.
you don't know Hugh Grant,
He's Hugh Grant.
GTFO.
He's Hugh
Yeah,
Grant.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
quite.
he plays Forge Fitzwilliams, and his character would have been a human rogue. That's what they would classify him in D&D. And then
Okay.
we've got Chloe Coleman. She's an up-and-coming actress. She was in Avatar: The Way of the Water, and then she was also in 65, which I didn't see. It was one of the movies we skipped this month. So she has 2 movies coming out this month.
She's like the little girl that he's protecting.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But
Okay.
she, Nance, did you go see 65? Because I thought you said
No,
you were
we
going to
ended
go
up
see that.
skipping it.
Okay. Well, we
The whole
missed that
world
I
one.
haven't seen Avatar either.
If anybody in the chat has seen 65, let us know your thoughts because
We're always open to doing an addendum. We're always open to, hey, this movie was actually pretty good. Like, what was the detective movie with Liam Neeson that was?
Oh, Philip Marlowe. It was okay.
Marlowe was recommended to us. I can't remember who it was.
I saw it.
We were like, oh yeah, we'll definitely see it because it's got some Bond connections and all that. And then we heard it was shite. So
it wasn't very. It wasn't. It was
That's
kind
why
of
we
the
didn't
same.
go see 65.
Yeah, it was in the same ballpark as Plane. For
like
Marlowe,
it would just like if I don't want anything. We want things that'll knock Cocaine Bear off the bottom, not things that will raise Cocaine Bear up. So that's where my head's at.
Okay. All right, and then finally we got Daisy Head. She's in stuff. I didn't really look. She's in things. That's all I got.
We want Ava Green, but we couldn't afford Ava Green.
There was a moment. There was a moment where I thought it was Kristen McKenna, isn't that who was in Ghostbusters and she was on SNL. I thought that's who it was for 2 seconds. I was like, that's not her. She has a very similar facial structure in the movie, at least. So, and then what else do we have? Oh yeah, of course. Our favorite Hobbit, Chucky Rance, is in this movie. He has a cameo as a halfling who is in love.
I thought that was Bradley Cooper.
Rodriguez.
Yeah. Okay. And just because I knew that McCurdy was gonna display my favorite picture ever, I know I said I wasn't wearing anything nerdy, but I do have one trinket that I wore for luck.
Fun fact.
There you go.
Behind Charlie, there's my parents' house.
Oh, is that your parents' house? Nice.
Wait, that is?
Yeah.
Is that really?
Because when we were in high school, because remember we did that whole group thing.
Yeah.
I guess it was Indiana Jones that day. That was like a homecoming event.
That was
that's right.
Event. Yeah.
Homecoming.
We all got laid. Every single one of us got laid that day. It was fantastic.
I mean, up to another person.
Yeah. I wasn't going to say that part, but
sorry.
And then in reality, it was of course Bradley Cooper. He has a little small cameo as a halfling. Yes, Charlie. In D&D, there are hobbits. They're just called halflings, which they refer to them halflings in the Hobbit.
Yeah. That's a PJ.
So
not a PJ.
That's a PG term. It's a PG term for a hobbit. Is a halfling.
I meant Peter Jackson, but it's not Peter Jackson. That's
Tolkien.
And I almost said Fleming. I've had whiskey.
Whatever.
It's Tolkien. Whatever.
You're drinking. Yeah. All right, and then so here we go. So this is the thing that because Jeff doesn't shut the fuck up. Thanks, Jeff. Towards the end of the movie, the gladiator-style tournament maze, we see some very colorful characters competing against our heroes. These characters are none other than the characters from the 1983 television cartoon Dungeons and Dragons. The show aired on CBS from 83 to 85 with 27 episodes. Man, that's a lot.
Oh, wow.
In the show, a group of kids go to an amusement park ride, then they're teleported into a new realm where they meet the Dungeon Master, which is
better movie.
Character.
That would have been a better movie.
I don't think so.
That would have been a better movie.
And then they are given magical items. And
that would have been a better movie.
Nans, got to keep this straight here. What was your thoughts on this movie? What did you think?
I liked it, and I thought it was fun. And I don't know what Charlie's problem is, minus he probably ended up with blue balls is what I think is what happened.
That's all we need. Fuck off. Would you, starting with Jeff, which we already know is an affirmative, would you recommend this movie?
Yes, I would.
Nathan. Yep, McCurdy's going to.
Yes, I would definitely.
And I think
Charlie hated it. Charlie hated it.
Charlie, your argument
literally said in that intro.
He's just upset that the guy didn't get with the elf chick.
Dislike the movie. The movie is a lot of fun, and for that, I will recommend it. I will recommend it for just a fun theater going experience. But I can't help but point out, it's just it would have made sense that nobody gets laid in this movie. That would have made sense if you go back a couple slides and you're dealing with what you're dealing with, like the ideal D&D movie for me, being an outsider, would be a bunch of kids playing it, and their imagination is what takes hold. And so we're going back and forth between kids in a basement and what their imagination is. And then that would make sense that they don't fuck. That would make sense.
So my
that would
theory,
make
Charles,
the ending.
Before going in there, I thought they were going to pull a Lego movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be this D&D movie for most of it. And then right at the end, it just also goes out to like a bunch of people at a table.
A bunch of kids playing. Yeah.
Yeah. Either it was going to be the
But you wouldn't do it.
I would have loved that,
right? Just at the very end.
No, I would have loved it throughout.
Beginning.
I would have loved had this just been purely imaginary, because my whole take on it is this: why does this need to be a D&D movie? Why had these guys write a fantasy story and then they just slap Dungeons and Dragons on it just because it's a pre-sold property? But this movie doesn't. It could just be fantasy the movie. It doesn't need to be Dungeons and Dragons, other than like
Charlie,
a couple of vague references.
Charlie, you never played D&D. You are so off the
what?
mark.
So what? It's a movie.
Charlie, exactly, it's a movie.
Oh, at one point the guy had a 20-sided die. That means it's Dungeons and
Charlie
Dragons.
just gets pissed that no one got laid.
Charlie, let me explain to you why you are so
Nobody banged that redhead. What's wrong with the world today?
Oh my god. Jesus Christ. So, okay, Charlie, remember when
I'd bang her as an owl bear? I would totally bang her as an owl bear. Shut up, McCurdy. Now I'm Scott. It's like Scott's spirit is going from one to the next.
Scott.
No. Your
argument is
the
so
vague
off
references,
the mark that I'm like,
the vague references to D&D are irrelevant. They don't matter.
God, dude. Yeah, they do.
They don't matter.
That's what makes them.
Why?
Let me explain why. Okay, shut up. Let me explain.
Go ahead.
Right? So you're like, oh, this movie, it doesn't have any fantasy. Like, it could have just been fantasy the movie. And I'm like, no, because for instance, one of the jokes that you guys probably watched The Mandalorian, correct? Has everyone here seen The Mandalorian? Okay.
Correct.
So one of the jokes a lot of people talk about in The Mandalorian is that it's become too much of a side quest for some of the episodes, and it feels like D&D adventures. For people who are fans of D&D, that's a lot of what D&D feels like when you're playing with a group of friends. It's not just, oh, these are like, this movie never takes itself seriously as far as the characters have to be these stoic and really believe who they are, like kind of thing. There's a little bit of tongue in cheek to every single character. Maybe save for Doric. But where I'm getting to my point is there's a lot of this story that does feel very D&D-esque when the characters are given, hey, you need to go get this MacGuffin. Okay, how are we going to go do that? Okay, this is what we're going to go do. We have to go to this actual dungeon or find this person to find this thing. It happens multiple times in the movie, and that's where I'm like, yeah, this feels exactly like what a D&D adventure feels like.
Then everything you're saying would be great if we kept cutting back to a bunch of kids playing it, so that I would understand that. I don't understand that because I don't play the fucking game.
So I think the issue with that is that there's been so many people who have done that already.
Yeah, and I agree with Jeff on that point, because you've seen
you mean movies that have done that?
Jumanji already did that not that long ago, and I feel like
Jumanji's the perfect example. Give me Jumanji with this movie. I would have loved it. That's a better D&D movie. That is a better D&D movie.
I want Kevin Hart. I want The Rock in my D&D
I don't think
movie.
I want a bunch of kids playing D&D, so I'm part of their game. So when they say, no, hey, they cut back to the kids and they go, hey, that's bullshit. You can only be chaotic good. You have to be chaotic good. And he's like, no, fuck you, man. I do what I want. That would make more contextual sense than just random fantasy going on in front of me, because I have no context of the game, and I don't care to have context of the game, right? We're talking about a new medium. And so in this new medium, a film, having something to anchor some D&D action, because otherwise it is just random fantasy movie that slaps on. Brought to you by Hasbro. Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
that's how I am being an outsider.
Angry about the movie to like enjoy it. That's the reading I'm getting. You're like, you were
so
angry about it.
I said at the outset that I had a fun time watching this movie, but it would have been a better Dungeons and Dragons movie. This was
hates ice cream.
This was like watching a comedic episode of Game of Thrones, and I'm okay with that. But a D&D movie should be about D&D.
Jeff,
And
did
this
you
isn't
like
really
it
about
when
D&D.
Paul Rudd as Baskin-Robbins employee showed up in Quantumania
You loved it because it was
during the
great.
possibilities scene?
Neither
And
of
I
these
also-
guys understood that joke. I had to explain it to them over several days.
I still enjoyed it.
I understand why you didn't like it, but I was like, it's whatever. I didn't get angry about it.
I never saw
Just
Ant-Man.
saying it's
You didn't see
whatever
Ant-Man, no.
is giving it a bullshit pass. And I don't believe in giving shit a
It's
pass.
a movie that you're
just because I
objective, like
don't-
you're giving your
just because I
I
subjective
don't
don't
think
answer to it.
not seeing kids makes it less D&D.
Yeah, I don't think it does either. I think
A
that
lot
because
So
but
the
why? Because
classes,
the guy was
species,
chaotic
creatures,
good.
the worlds, those are all from D&D.
I want to hear from
Yeah.
Jeff. Are
Okay,
there?
that's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear.
Charlie,
Keep
you
going on
said
that,
in
Jeff.
your audience there was a group who might have been Jeff's friends who were laughing at particular jokes that you weren't laughing at, and I'm wondering if there were D&D references that I
That is what I
completely
wanna hear.
missed or jokes.
It's so basically it's like me taking my parents to go see Lord of the Rings. My mom doesn't know anything about Lord of the Rings beyond the movies. So when she sees it, she just thinks, "Oh yeah, it's just fantasy, whatever." It doesn't make any sense. To us, we're like, "Oh, the reference to this world, like this town, this character." It's like how you always fans like, "Where's my Tom Bombadil in Lord of the Rings?" You're like, "Why does that matter?" But it's like but it's fun for those who know it. The same thing with this. D&D.
But that's the thing. It's still at the end of the day, though. Lord of the Rings still works for anybody who's never picked up any book.
Same
It
with this.
still works.
I think
D&D
this
works the
works
same
with
way.
yeah, and this definitely works. My daughter saw this. She's never played D&D and she loved it. And like I think
yeah, but that's not the point. The point isn't that
Your
it's not
point doesn't
enjoyable. The point is that as a D&D movie, it would have been stronger had it involved
And
the
that-
game. As
I don't
opposed
think
to
that
what else
I don't
have they
think
done?
that matters. The movie was a
what
good
other movies?
movie.
What
I
other
don't think
Hasbro
that
movies
matters.
have there been? It was Hasbro. Is Hasbro Transformers?
Yes, Transformers.
Okay, Transformers
G.I.
doesn't need
Joe.
acknowledgement of the toys. Battleship
Battleship.
doesn't need two kids sitting there playing. But with D&D, I think it does. I really think that you do need something to anchor it because otherwise it is just vague fantasy.
I don't
My
agree.
concern though is if they start bringing the kids, because they need to try to figure out how to keep it involved or even the intensity. Like, why would they even care about either D&D characters now knowing they're not even real people? They're just kids bickering at a table.
Yeah.
Which I think is fun.
Well, Char, I
It's
wonder
not-
if
that
everyone
doesn't-
knows Battleship, everyone knows Transformers, and they're just more obvious portions of our culture, right? Where Dungeons and Dragons has always been like the closet nerd group in the back. Like,
But
we're
think
playing Dungeons and Dragons. People
I
should
think
know about this.
the more that
But I like
I
what you
think-
just said, Nance. I like that. I like that. Hey, kids, and the game gets interrupted because it's dinner time. I like that. I like that. It's just like
What if we
a bunch
had-
of kids in the back room or a basement?
I
That's
think
fun.
In college, I was involved with a movie, like it was like a student film we made, where that's really how the movie started. We had an animation team at my college make this little intro, this whole like animated D&D intro showing, and we actually did like face scans and like molding of the actual actors and everything.
Whoa.
And it was going to be the whole serious thing, and then it was going to hard cut them at a table, just all yelling at each other about some rule someone broke in
Which
the
is
game.
fun.
But once again, with this kind of game, like then why would I care about the Chris Pine character, like, or like would I care about spoiler alert at the end when Holga dies? I'm like, well, I don't care because
Okay, sorry. We are in. We've done right. Anytime we do recommendations, we're already in Spoilerville.
Okay, good.
And so we're in Spoilerville. Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it, but the idea of like, I'm not going to be worried for anybody. I'm not going to be worried about how this story then goes from the D&D world, knowing that it is just a bunch of kids.
But did you were you concerned about them regardless?
yeah,
Like-
I was.
I feel like
that
the death
ending
actually-
though.
Yeah.
That ending when it
I was
like
happy that he was going to use it on some one of the other characters, but it's just like who's going to die? kind of thing.
that ending was.
feel like you're
I think the
judging-
weakest part of the movie was that ending, and that's
I don't
that's
think,
kind of the
I
thing. The
completely
payoffs,
disagree.
the
I agree.
payoffs, I think
100%
were
agree.
weak.
It's
The
like
payoffs
predictable.
Okay, so
No, it's not weak.
the payoffs
liked it.
between like the
No, the-
romance, those never landed because they didn't want to.
They didn't
And then the
need that.
payoff with the mom was poorly acted. Maybe just on the little girl's part, whatever her name was. Chris Pine is always good, but it was. I know I don't usually use the term cringe because I'm not down with I'm not hip to the jive and all that. But I legitimately had a cringe moment when and I get it that the whole time all he wanted to do was go save his wife. But there really wasn't a fleshed out moment where I was sitting there also being like, no, you need to say Olga, is that her name?
Olga.
Or Holga.
Where I'm like, no, save her. It was such an unearned moment where the little girl is like, please save apparently my best friend Holga. And then he looks to her. He's like, no, I really want to go resurrect my dead wife. All of you have wives. Can you imagine if your wife died and you had the ability to bring her back, but your daughter in an emotional moment suddenly wanted to
Charlie,
bring back
Charlie.
like I guess a friend? No, let me finish. Let me finish.
No,
that was such a weird moment. That was not a weird just moment. Because a dragonfly landed on his wrist, all of a sudden he doesn't want to bring back the woman who carried his daughter for 9 months.
You were so
that was
that
poorly
other kids were not in this movie doing D&D that you completely decided.
I'm past that. Now I'm just talking about the movie itself. That was like an unearned moment that was awkward where she looks at him and she's like, "Please bring back my friend." He's like, "I'm trying to bring back your mom, yo. We can bring back your mother." And yet refuses to bring
her mom because she never knew her mom.
Holga was her real mom.
So what? Like it was
because she actually has more connection to Holga than her own mom,
which is fine for the daughter, but for Chris Pine to suddenly decide that he's going to follow as opposed to doing what he should have done.
He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to.
Because he finds out because
he was trying to get away with all the gold, and then he remembers the pact that he made with what's his face.
I don't think it worked. I just don't think it worked. Just because the dragonfly landed on him, it was weird. And
his wife in their house and the dragonfly, and she says the comment like, "Sometimes you just gotta learn to just let him go, let him out."
Sure. Like I understand the mechanics behind it. It's not like I don't understand the symbol of the dragonfly, but a better moment would have been if he could have at least. Not instead of a dragonfly symbol, if he could have actually seen and spoken to his wife, who then said, leave me be, bring back so and so. That would have worked better. Sure, a Casper moment. A Casper moment would have cinematically worked better than the daughter she's like really emotional because she lost her friend and the daughter's the one who decides, as opposed to Chris Pine being like, no, I really think the best thing here is to bring back your mother, and I know you don't know your mom, but that's literally my wife. And it would have been better if he had already fallen in love with Holga. That would have worked if he was like, okay, now new mom is Holga. We're going to bring her back.
Holga, for all intents and purposes,
Holga went off and fucked a hobbit. And as soon as he brought her back to life, she went off and fucked a hobbit. Like that's
her thing.
I know. And that sucks. That sucks.
So someone did get laid, you're saying?
What?
So someone did get laid.
Well, I guess we didn't get to see that, but yeah.
Off
camera. Everything's off camera.
If we had seen it.
No on-camera love. Everything's off camera. So
Charlie wants to see the short guy get the tall girl.
Well, that's easy. Just go to YouPorn. You can find all sorts of stuff for that.
Yeah.
Why are you paying money to go to a theater to hopefully see that when you can just Google image search will get that right away.
Oh, yeah, I loved all the characters. Fun character. I'm not even talking about the main characters, but Jonathan was awesome. There's so many. It's not CGI crap either.
I love the practical makeups and costumes on people, and
I enjoyed a lot of the stuff. Fantastical world. I really liked it.
All the Dragonborns.
I don't know what Charlie's got up his butt.
Okay.
Probably a 20-sided dice.
Before you guys keep doing the bullshit of I absolutely hated the movie, I said from the fucking outset that I don't like. I
hate it.
I enjoyed the movie, so quit doing you just hate Goldfinger. Quit doing that shit. There's a lot of good to the movie, but like I said at the outset, it's a hit and miss movie. It is like a 50-50 hit and miss movie. I laughed my ass off at several times. And as usual, I was the one guy in the theater laughing. Like when he did when he's playing a song and he 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 song, and he starts melting. Yeah, like that was awesome. And I was the only asshole. For some reason, nobody found that funny. And I was dying, like embarrassing myself.
Is it 50% D&D references that we don't know and 50% normal jokes that everyone would know?
I doubt it.
And you were
I
just
really doubt
upset
it.
that you don't understand the D&D
Oh,
jokes?
chaotic good. That's so funny. No,
And
I
I
don't.
was
I don't.
fine
I
with it.
really don't think I missed out on context. Like I doubt it.
No,
But I
and that's
could
what I
have.
think helps the movie. It helps the movie that it was a very good movie for those who don't know anything about D&D, who could just enjoy the characters and the more silliness of it. And that, because
Sure.
honestly, the silliness of it made me feel like a game I would be playing with my friends, where this most ridiculous interactions with us.
Yeah.
We're all smart asses when we're playing D&D. They're like, everyone's like, no one's really taking it that serious except for like, there's always that one friend, and that's the guy playing the paladin. You always have that one friend who takes it way too serious.
Charlie,
had
in
the-
this video,
the Dave
You are
Bautista
the
guy,
paladin.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had the.
Oh,
friend
sorry,
that-
I'm taking movies seriously. What the fuck are we here for? We're here to take them. But
in the book it says I can only.
We're actually here to
I
have a
just want to
discussion
turn my
about
brain
it
off.
versus you
I will
just
never
properly
abide by
talking
that
about it.
fucking bullshit. Don't ever count on me to just want to turn my brain off because I'm going to hold movies to a standard. Sorry. That's why we're here.
I don't.
And if the movie is like a 50-50, I can enjoy myself.
but I don't
But
think it
I think
not
you're
living
so
up
off.
to
You're like
Go
you're
off
like
you
how?
think it should have been one
Here's
way.
why you're
means
off.
it's
Okay, so
bad.
you're explaining to me. You're like, well, why would he just? Why are we letting the daughter decide? You don't have a kid, dude. You
She
don't
didn't
understand.
decide.
Like,
Oh, blow me. I don't need to have a kid to
yes, you
appreciate a
do.
story.
Like if in that moment Chris Pines realizes, he's like, I've been chasing. That's the lie that he's been telling himself. He's like, I need to bring back my wife. I need to bring back my wife. Because and he realizes he's doing it.
So
Hold on.
empathy doesn't
Shut
exist.
up.
The whole point of movies
I can't make an
is
argument on the
empathy.
show.
The whole point of movies is to express empathy. What
Okay,
you're
I'm done.
saying
Fine.
is I have to have the
I'm
same
done.
lived experiences. Wow. That's the first time
I
McCurdy's
will
ever
agree with McCurdy though.
rage quit.
So it's like one of those things like, well, I can't really just because I don't have a kid. And then when I do have a kid, it's weird how going back and watching a lot of movies that involve kids, how much harder it hits me.
Sure.
It really
That's a
is
real
like,
thing. I'm not denying that
yeah.
that's a real thing.
So, and like, to his point, the whole movie he's lying to himself, saying, "I'm doing this to get her mom back," when really he's actually doing it to get his wife back. It has nothing to even do about trying to get her mom. It's all him being.
He's
so
very self-centered, and
yes, and
she's been calling him out the whole time. He's like, "Well,
Yeah.
I was doing it for this or that," and it's like, "No, you've always just been doing it to get the riches."
Yeah.
And then finally, at the end of the movies, realizing, oh, he needs to be more self-sacrificial.
Yeah, because it was his own like ego and his whole like self-centeredness that killed his wife. The whole idea, he stole that, thinking, "Oh, whatever, it's all right, I can take
Grabbing
this."
the
it'll
gold,
get me." Yeah, and because of that, that's what killed his wife. And so it's like he wants to bring her back because he has this internal guilt, like that he thinks I took her mom from her. It's all my fault. He has this guilt about it. And honestly, she grew up, and the thing is, she's like what in the movie? His daughter, probably like what, 13, 14, 15, somewhere around that age.
Yeah, 12, 13.
So that means like his wife's been gone for over a decade.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's got to learn to let her go.
He has no memories of her, and but my point isn't that I don't understand the mechanics. My point is that, like, let me put it this way, or specifically regarding what McCurdy just said. I remember when the movie Moonlight came out, which I legitimately think is a piece of shit movie. And I remember talking to somebody about it, and they said, well, you only think that because you're neither black nor gay. And I was like, well, hang on a second. That's that's not the point. The point is, it doesn't matter who or what I am. What matters is that when you're telling a story, so like what you're implying is that only black and gay people can appreciate Moonlight. I thought that you make a movie to break down barriers and express something that everybody can appreciate because everybody has empathy. So what you're saying is I don't have enough empathy to appreciate a movie when I say, no. It's not that the movie didn't.
Yeah.
The movie fucked up. The movie didn't do what it needed to do to make me feel the feely feels, regardless of me having kids.
It's like me as a parent, I get so pissed off when you get some parents who like talk to those who aren't parents, are like, you don't know what it is to be tired until you're a parent.
Yeah.
Like those like who think once you become a parent, they're like they get this smugness about like you don't even know what it's like until you're a parent.
I can understand it.
I'm a parent now, and yes, I am tired a lot. And like you said, a lot of times the reason I miss the shows because I have to cancel. I have kids. It's just a fact of life. But I'm not gonna like make people feel bad because I have
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So like, like in the movie, he's like, it's like,
Like just because it hits you harder doesn't mean that that like it should have hit me too, and that's why I say a preferable moment would have been where because and again I go back to that moment was I think the little girl I objectively I think she just kind of acted that moment poorly. I just think that
she was just
work
okay in
all
that.
that
There were
well.
moments was like, that was a little
Yeah, and
rough. It's like,
it was cheap.
you're sorry.
It was just like a kind of a
I didn't notice.
cheaply.
I don't want to. I don't ever want to bash like kid actors.
Kids aren't good actors generally.
But she's not a kid. How old is she? I don't even know.
Well,
she's
that's what
like
I'm saying.
She's a
teenager.
kid.
Well,
I was
we
surprised how
can
decently
say-
Michelle Rodriguez
I
did in
I
that
don't know if
scene.
you guys ever brought this up, but I won't say the name. But we all have experience interacting with a child actor. We went to high school with a very well.
We've already brought him up.
We've
Okay.
talked about Jake. Yeah.
I ran into him like this is all post college too. So this has been like I don't know, like 8 years ago, maybe even less than that, like 6 years. I ran into him again. He came up to me and said hi to me.
Oh no way. Cool.
Yeah, because I was working at a video store, at a movie store, and he was just like in looking for stuff. And he goes, oh, went to high school, didn't we? I'm like, yeah, I already knew who he was, but I didn't want to be the jerk to like approach him
Because
like,
he
I'm
was
sure-
part of our.
He was in our graduating
He was
class.
more the freaks group than the
He was
geeks
great.
group.
The thing is, he was very, very nice, and I feel, and still like one thing, I still feel bad. 'Cause like, man, imagine being like a 10-year-old kid and hundreds of people, millions of people all over the world telling you you suck, you ruined my movie because you suck acting.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
Nightmare.
Yeah,
But I mean,
so-
at least you didn't do the thing that some other schoolmates of ours would have done, which was Luke. You know, like they would just do Star Wars isms in the hallway and stuff. And I you know, it did after a while. It did drive them mad, but it wasn't like I don't know. It's easy to say as an outsider, like I don't know, is it so hard to own it? But yeah, having people hounding you and I mean, we made an entire video where I fart into my hand and sniff it because Jeff, I don't know if you know about this. Did you watch the fart video?
I unfortunately did not watch that.
You did not watch it. Good for you.
That's why I missed it.
Somebody and this is I guess a proper time to bring it up because McCurdy's pissed off, but we got a comment that was that guy on the left, as in me. He should start his own podcast where he sniffs his farts and reviews them. And I was like, that's mean. That's not very nice, but that's you know, that's what I mean, and then take that and then multiply that out by Star Wars. You're in Star Wars and people are giving you all kinds of shit. Like
I think this is early
God.
internet days too. So like
Yeah.
this is like really early days, like before you could really
Yeah.
easily just go online and find millions of comments, like Twitter and all everything to.
Yeah. Like we get hateful comments regularly and it sucks. It really sucks, but it's just part of the game. I can't imagine being I mean, and then the reverse of that is that he could have made the best Star Wars movie ever and then be so praised that like, you know, wait, ask me, should I have sold that fart instead?
I'm sure many girls have.
Missing a market there.
But getting back to the point,
Back to the movie.
it's a cheap shot. It's a cheap argument to say you don't understand because you don't have kids. That shouldn't matter because that implies I don't have empathy. Do you know how many fucking kids I've seen die in movies and it's sad as fuck?
Yeah.
Or kids lose their moms and it's sad as fuck. And I
I've
agree
watched
with you,
it 4
Jeff.
times. I know how it
Naturally,
goes.
if you have like anytime I see a kid die these days, I automatically go to members of my family who are nieces and nephews, and it hits harder. But my point is, you don't need to have nieces and nephews. You don't need to have sons and daughters to have the empathy to shed a tear when somebody dies. So I'll never abide by. You don't have my same lived experience. That's fucking bullshit. I don't give a fuck about your lived experience. The movie either works or it doesn't. And that moment I think was poorly acted. And I don't think it was earned because Olga or whatever didn't have enough time with Bug for me to feel the feely feels.
We saw it in a montage, Charlie.
Exactly. A last minute montage. So
I mean, even early in that, the touch of when they go back, they go to the castle, and they see his daughter for the first time since they broke out. She immediately runs to Holga.
yeah, that was a
Like,
good. That, I
so
like
sad.
that. Yeah.
And like, yeah, I wish I had more of those moments together, of them together. Like,
Yes.
of her
In
Holga,
that
like,
final
that
scene, in the
interaction,
final
yeah.
battle, they should have been together through the whole final battle. Instead, the little girl was invisible, right? She
Or
has a
showing
little
Holga
pendant.
doing more to, like, maybe Holga does more to actually defend the girl. Like,
Yes.
you're seeing the Holga's the one who actually defended her. Like, maybe
How did she get the knife?
She got the knife because she was trying to protect the girl.
But
I
and
could- I
you're,
would've
you're
liked
saying
that.
that's the way it should have been, right? But that's not what it
I
was,
would have
right?
loved that. I think it would have helped it a lot. Make it
Yes,
sell that
exactly.
moment a lot.
Exactly.
But, I mean,
Yeah.
This is a movie, honestly, I loved it a lot. Probably the reason I like it so much is because my expectation was pretty low for a movie like this. This is a
Yeah.
movie that could have very easily have been really bad, like the first Dungeons and Dragons movie from like the 2000. It
Yeah.
could have been bad. I think the directors. I don't know if you guys ever saw Game Night at all.
I did. That came out during COVID, I think.
I saw that and really liked it.
It was like 2017.
Yeah, I love the.
17.
Oh,
How could that possibly be?
So back to being like
Can't even say the line.
So during that time when that movie came out, my friend told us to go see it. We're like, my wife and I go see it. We're like, great. At the time, my wife and I were struggling to get pregnant. We already spent 3 years of trying to get pregnant to have a kid. The premise of that movie at the beginning is you find out Jason Bateman and I can't remember her name now. Crap. But anyway,
Nan's
it's Jason,
on it.
yeah, Jason Bateman and his wife,
Rachel McAdams.
Rachel McAdams. They find out they have infertility. That's how the movie starts, and we're like, "Fuck you, movie!"
Like, hey, I just want to forget about being infertile and go to the movies and just
that's the
forget about it.
That's the whole point of the movie is that they like can't get pregnant. We're like, we can't
Yeah.
escape it. It was just like one of those moments, like,
Yeah.
I just
Rachel
love the
McAdams.
weird neighbor
but yeah,
that they
Jesse
won't
Plemons.
invite over for game night.
Well, so one
Yeah,
thing
I remember
The
that.
thing that stuck out most
How
for
could
me
that
from Game Night
possibly be?
was a lot of cinematography, a lot of really
Profitable for
like,
Frito-Lay.
fun camera
For
shots
this
and,
movie?
like, movements. No, Game Night. Game Night has some
Oh,
really
okay.
fun shots and cameras and cinematography in it,
Hmm.
which I saw a lot translated into this movie. So like the shots with them going through the portal in the frame,
Yeah.
like stuff like that. Like that felt very much like those directors. Like that's like they have that sort of style look to them.
Yeah. So we
I
generally
appreciate
assume
that.
that people have watched the movie if they're going to continue hanging out with us. But for purposes of illustration, what'd you say, paladin? Right?
Paladin,
The
it's
paladin,
really-
the magical dude.
I've heard
Big-
of paladins. I
big-
didn't know that meant you were like so literal.
the really pompous guy. Like that's the paladin.
That's the paladin. Okay, so a mage.
Yeah, he's
Then
a
the
wizard.
mage.
Mage. There's
Okay,
like just
so
a magic wielder.
Yeah, so the mage guy, he has a staff that is basically like the video game Portal. It's called a hither thither staff.
I
Is that-
was
is that-
expecting the second portal to be orange.
Yeah, right. Yeah, is that is something like that from D&D, like
Oh,
a
yeah,
hither
no,
hither
like,
thither?
The weapons, the spells they talk about, the spells he uses are all real
All
spells
D&D.
and
Okay.
D&D. Once again, for someone who plays D&D, I get them. But for anyone else, they're like, "Oh, great! Yeah, it's a portal staff. Like that's all you need to know."
Yeah,
it's great.
exactly. It's a portal staff. Like who? If
They
you
do-
haven't
I
played
really
Portal,
like the
it's
stuff they
fantastic.
do with the portal, like how they get the
It's clever.
painting
that
thing
is the
into the
best-
carriage.
Best part of the movie
And
is
that's awesome.
like two. There's the scenes in the graveyard with the 5 questions when you bring
Oh
back
my
a
God,
dead body and you ask them
honest.
5 questions. That and then the portal stuff. That's all killer. That's what I mean by it's like really creative and like
And
it,
that stuff is what makes me feel like a D&D movie, because that's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff you have to think about when you're playing D&D. You have to like.
you
lot of
have
times it happens-
5 questions and
Yeah,
you
and
you
so
know
like, and you give a really asshole DM who's going to be that guy like, "Yep, that counts as a question."
yeah.
you
Hey
also
guys,
have-
what are we having for dinner? Like that counts as a question. Yeah.
Or like getting that staff. You had fun. Like now is just your character trying to think of creative ways. How can I use this random ass weapon? So my own personal, my first D&D game I played was with a guy who'd been playing D&D for like At that point, 20 years he'd been playing D&D.
I feel like you have to play with someone like that, right?
He was amazing. It was
To get
go
started.
figure, my first DM was like this really into guy. He was great because he was great and letting us just make up shit as much. He welcomed it. He wanted you to like find ways. He's like, if you find some loophole in my game, because that's what happens a lot of times in games. You almost like your players that try to break your DM's game. Like I want to try to fuck with your NPC in this game. We got in a battle where my character's arm got bit off by a creature. And so he had gained like this like little jewel wrist thing that like gave me like a phantom hand, and I could have powers with the hand. Like my hand could extend out further distances while holding a sword, or I could like use it almost like a grappling thing, and, like grab like long distances.
Yeah, sounds fun.
So I got to make up shit. Like I would fuck with my other teammates by like having the hand kind of come around cords and like grab them or something like that, or like I'd do things that mess. Or it was great improvising. Like I'm in a dungeon. I need to get into this other room. Wait, I have a ghost hand that can slip underneath the door and come around and unlock it from the other side.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Again, it's everybody's improving together. That's
how it felt like watching the movie with them. Like they have the staff. Like, what can you do? Oh, they create their heist, their oceans.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's where the argument there being that when you have that as an outlet, as a creative outlet, you could make the argument that all of us growing up with video games were kneecapped creatively, imaginatively, because instead of sitting around a table and all cooperatively imagining things, we just were sitting in somebody else's world, playing that world, pre-programmed world.
You play
versus
Zelda,
something we
you
came
have
up
to
with.
be Link. There is no character creation in Zelda.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
nothing you're updating. You can't change the story. There's lots of games that try to do that, like, oh, every decision you do in the game affects, like Fable was that. I was like one of those earlier ones. Like everything you do can change the outcome of the game. There's multiple endings.
Oh yeah. When you were talking about the go here, get that, talk to this person. Like a lot of people will dock video games for that, fetch quests, or
like in Zelda,
where you have to
go get me
escort
70
someone
crickets,
from
and I'm like,
point A
no,
to B.
I'm out.
There's the joke always of Zelda, like, there's this ancient being that's going to destroy the whole world. Great. I gotta find this guy grasshoppers real quick. I'll be
yeah, exactly. And anytime I have that, I go, I don't care. I mean, even I have never collected all the sculptulas because who cares? Like, there's no reason to. And especially as time goes on, like I'm playing. I just started Witcher 3 because after years of being hounded to play it, I'm doing it. And another friend of the channel, Mr. Junie, he's all excited about it, and he's been playing alongside me.
Oh really?
And
maybe I should start playing it and live streaming it.
Like he and I are playing together separately, and he'll be like, "Wait a second, how are you already to this?" And I go, "Because I just keep following the story." And he's like, "No, you need to do this side quest. You need to do that side quest." I'm like, "Fuck you, Johnny. I don't have all the time in the world." You know?
Yeah, like, why aren't you going and play those card games in the pubs all the time? Come on.
Yeah. The first thing he said was, "There's two kinds of players: those who Gwent and those who don't Gwent." And I was like, "What the fuck is Gwent? I don't care." You know, like, just like let me burn through it like a movie. But he's right. There are certain side quests that are.
I have like over 200 hours logged in Breath of the Wild. I love it. I've already requested days off from work to play the next game coming out.
When does it come out?
Honey, we need money for diapers. Fuck off! The sequel came out.
Literally, like I told my wife, like I plan to be in the basement for like the full day, like to play this game.
Am I allowed to be with you? Am I allowed to be next to you on my own separate TV?
You're welcome to. I will get another TV down here and hook it up and everything for you if you want to. Because no, you're talking about big. Charlie and I were old Legend of Zelda nerds. Like,
well, SB said at the very outset. Let me see. SB said, "He's like, yeah, Jeff has a bunch of stuff in the background. I can't find. Yeah, he goes. Jeffrey has a thing for bows and arrows, but where is Link from Zelda?" And then that was when you pulled out the sword, and he says, "Oh, never mind."
Shield.
And you made that. That.
I made this.
Yeah, that's kick ass. Do you sell that? You make a bunch of stuff. Do you sell any of it, or you just throw it up on the wall?
I do a lot of gifts for friends. Like I actually have a paper art. Like I do like paper craft, wood craft. Like I made my sister for her birthday a holder for like Harry Potter wands. She has a whole bunch. Her husband have a whole bunch of them. So I made like this cool like old looking wood side with like Ollivander's logo on it with like hooks on it.
What's that? I don't know if other stores are doing it, but GameStop has a pre-order thing for Tears of the Kingdom where it's a wooden plaque
Really?
Yeah, which Nan's just like, it's a wooden plaque. Like what?
I can
Why?
make something
Well,
better,
Jeff might
that's
be
why.
interested in it.
Yeah. Well, he's already got one.
What were you
He
asking?
can
Like,
just-
yeah, I don't know if you guys back there. Like, that's all Hawkeye right
Really?
there. Yeah, every single one of those
I
figures
can
is a
I definitely
Hawkeye.
see the big one. I
Yeah,
didn't know it was all Hawkeye.
Do you have like a
That's
Jeremy Renner
Yeah, that's Jeremy Renner right there.
boner?
That's,
Like,
oh no, I have Hawkeye. Like Hawkeye, the character.
Jeremy
He's a-
Renner's a weirdo.
oh, he's a
Yeah,
great weirdo.
He had an app.
Why Hawkeye?
like-
We're on a major tangent, but I'm
Behind me
interested.
here. I made this. This is a prop I wear for. I've gone to conventions cosplayed as Hawkeye.
That makes sense. That makes nothing but sense. But why Hawkeye? I want to know.
As a kid, there was an old video game for like Sega and Super Nintendo called Captain America and the Avengers. You could play as Captain America, Iron Man, Vision, or Hawkeye. And I have an obsession with bows and arrows, like Link. I loved Legolas when Lord of the Rings first came out. I thought that was always so
course.
cool. And I thought he just looked like it. Green Arrow, I'm okay about. The problem is Green Arrow in the beginning was like he was still a rich guy. With Hawkeye, he's like, I'm an orphan who grew up on a circus who just had to get really good to survive. Where Green Arrow's like, I'm a rich billionaire.
Okay, I didn't know that. How did I
Yeah.
not know he was a circus kid?
Because no one cares about Hawkeye.
And then also,
Well, does he have a TV show or anything?
yeah, he did. Well, so there's a great comic.
I mean, like a
comic-
recent one.
Yeah, on Disney
Oh.
Plus. the
Okay,
Hawkeye show,
I didn't watch that.
which is- it's okay. I mean,
It's still
fine.
Renner, right?
Is
Yeah,
it
it's
Jeremy?
Still Renner and
Okay.
just Steinfeld. I can't remember her name now. Haley Steinfeld. She plays.
She was in that
Okay.
Bumblebee Transformers movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a great Hawkeye comic that was like mid 2000s by Matt Fraction. That's great. It's just about Hawkeye just in New York, bumming around New York, just getting accidentally sucked into things. Like a lot of it's like of him just going, "Ah, shit, not again," or like this sucks. Like it's just him like and being beat to shit by like these gangs in New York that he's trying to stop. Like the reason he gets sucked in because he saves a dog that was like almost hit by all these like mafia guys, and they end up like now targeting him. It's just him like having like the shittiest week in the basically. Like that's the whole comic is
Does
about.
Renner though? Does Renner have some kind of fixation with Hawkeye, or did he just take the role because it was a role to be
I think
taken?
that was just a role they offered that he was
Okay.
offered, especially in that first Avenger. His like he first appears in Thor, and it's such a like one shot thing, and then even in
Yeah.
the first Avengers, he's gone for half of it because he's brainwashed, whatever, gone, and it's kind of sucks.
He still makes
That's
an
what-
impression in the Thor movie, but it's still
Mhm.
like the classic joke is in one of the Avengers movies. He's like, "None of this makes sense. I have a bow and arrow during an apocalyptic."
Giant robots on
situation,
a flying continent. All I have is bows and arrows. None of this actually makes sense, and that's
Yeah.
honestly what makes him great because he is surrounded by like a god, a like
Yeah.
billionaire tech guy, and like the super soldier from. He's like, I'm just here because
He's like Batman without
I
the
wanna
money. It's like I'm just a
yeah,
guy.
that's what I like. He just became really good at what he does because he wanted to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So okay.
I like
Anyway,
that. And it's
if
smart
we
ass. That's
if
why I
we
like
switch back to
it. To Dungeons and
getting on
Dragons.
point, I have no idea where we were, but like again, I'm not. I said it. Just let me just start at the base again. I said from the get-go, I like this movie. I
This is
had a
for you,
good
Nico.
time watching this movie, but there
Hi,
are
Nico.
certain things that, again, I go, there really is a trend. There unfortunate trend where you're not allowed to see anybody romantically get together because, and again, I'm like, is it just because we're all so jaded that to see the magic guy and the redhead get together?
Wait, where-
like
what?
it's like the whole point is that his
are you
character arc
talking
is
about?
that finding his confidence, and he finally does find his confidence. And once he does that, the cliche breaking thing would have been for the redhead magical chick to just like grab him and lay one on him because she's so overwhelmed by how confident he is now. That would have been great. That would have been one of these things where I'm not saying it's a bad movie.
She
because
agreed
it
to go
doesn't
on a
have
date
these,
with him.
but it's not a lasting, meaningful movie because it's inhuman. It's just not human. It lacks that human factor because
say,
of that.
I think-
Unless, sorry, one more point on that. The only reason I say that The difference being that if it was a bunch of kids around a table playing the game, then it would have made sense that they don't hook up because they're just a bunch of kids, as opposed to there aren't kids playing the game. We are in a world, like a real fantastical world where there should have been that overly romantic kiss because this is fantasy and that would have added some meaning. But instead we don't have that. We just have, hey, do you want to maybe we spark our interest again? And she's like, maybe, it's just, it's inhuman to me.
I don't know. It seems pretty human to me.
Why? How? Are you just giving it a pass or do you really think that?
I don't understand your issue with this movie not having more romantic stuff in it. Who cares?
But that's the point. That's the same argument as turn your brain off.
No. Why does every movie has to have romantic connections in it?
No. It's not that every movie has to have it, but if the whole time you're implying it, there's a story thread from.
We're not implying it the whole time.
Yes, it is.
He asks her out once, and then they lose connection.
He's like, it's an ex-girlfriend of mine. He's like, this is an ex-girlfriend of mine. She kind of rejected me because I don't have confidence. That means right away that the story arc is going to be he gets his confidence back to get the girl he wants.
And then she agrees to go on a date with him.
Yeah, it's just like, okay.
What, did you want to see them go on a date?
No, I wanted to see them fuck.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. You didn't realize she had a tail till halfway through, and then you were like, wait a minute.
You're not going to make good on it. You don't even bring it up.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was like, wait, what was that?
Let my wife for sitting next
to me. That was a tail?
Is that a tail, right? Oh, my shit.
Oh, I never even noticed it. But she could just tuck her tail, right? She could just tuck her tail whenever she wants because she could just kind of like transmogrify, right? She can just,
I don't know.
She can turn into a worm. She can tuck a tail away. But my point being that if you're going to bring up a story thread, bring it to the logical conclusion or the emotional conclusion. But otherwise, just don't even have them romantically involved at all. That's my point. Like if you're going to start,
no, I disagree.
Finish it. If you're not going to finish it, don't even start.
So were you saying you just wanted to see them kiss at some point? That's basically all you really wanted, probably the most out of it. Like the very minimum, you want to see them delete kiss.
Agreeing to go on a date isn't enough for Charlie. He wants a kiss. He wants to see them date and get married and have a weird child.
She was still looking at him like, I don't know, like he's like, hey, can I put my hand on your knee? And she's like clearly it's not going to work out.
Well, I don't think he came out of it being 100% confident anyway. He was confident in a moment, but where it mattered,
and that would have been better if they were a bunch of kids playing and he has a crush on the cute redhead girl. You know what I mean? Like
I had that thought after I saw it. My wife and I went to
cute redhead girl wouldn't be there. We all know that.
We were talking about like, what if they did do that? What if they did just like did a jump cut to also a bunch of kids at a table arguing, or even just a bunch of adults arguing, because there are like adults who play this
either
now.
kids or a bunch of Brendan Fraser's in the whale guys.
Just have Chris Pine in a fat suit.
And one of the guys is the redhead.
That's what I mean.
That's what I mean. When I say kids, it doesn't need to be. I'm just throwing that out.
Stranger Things.
You guys are correct. It could be a bunch of just like an ugly version of Chris Pine, an ugly version, or not even an ugly version, but just like an alternate version of all these people playing the game would make so much more sense for me as an outsider.
I think it's also that would have been interesting. It'd been a very tough needle to thread there because you also don't want to obviously go into like stereotypes. You don't want to like do typical nerd guys because this is your audience coming. The last thing you want to do is
make fun of them.
Make fun of them.
But they would have understood it.
Because at least
and laughed at it.
Well, what about all these celebrities then? Bring in Vince Vaughn and Henry Cavill and
it makes me think like, so that's what I was thinking. Like I thought they were going to go the Lego Movie route of how then they like have you find out it's a little kid playing the figures and the dad is is Will Ferrell's been there being the hard ass dad. Because at least that movie kind of made fun of the crazy Lego adults who take Legos way too serious and are like, I have to have these perfect model city and everything. The kids, kind of showing that like you can have fun too, right?
Yeah, and there's a
Just
lesson
toys.
there. You know, he's like, no, you
Whereas-
can never have fun. You just look, but you don't
whereas
touch.
That is like, how would you then incorporate a lesson in D&D?
A lesson in D&D, like if there was a
Is
romantic
there, is,
payoff?
is there to be a lesson with the humans that are playing a D&D game? If they were to hard cut there, this is where I was talking about, like, my investment in the characters in the fantasy world are going to become less if I find it out it's
Okay.
just being a bunch of people at a table.
I
and, like,
didn't even
my answer
think
for that-
about it being a fantasy world. I just
My
thought
answer-
of it as like a Lord of the
then you have
Rings
to try
kind
to
of
figure out,
thing.
now you got to make the story about the kids playing the table at this table, or the nerds playing at the table, and figure out, all right, what is it that needs to be resolved, or what's going on with
Okay.
them that's going to
Speaking of
change.
Lord of the Rings, remember at the end when the whole like the beginning of the movie, the beginning of the trilogy, Samwise Gamgee is suffering the same problem. He has confidence issues, and Frodo's like, ask Rosie for a dance, you know, and he's like, I can't. And then at the end, after he's faced everything, right? He's literally saved the world. What does he do? He stands up. He goes. He just, I guess, off camera, proposes to Rosie. Cut to Samwise Gamgee's getting married to the babe of his life. That's what I mean. And asking her out on a date is like the minimal level. Like, it's like, okay, that's fine. But imagine this. Imagine if after all was said and done, and they were they all saved the world, cut back to the kids or adults that are just playing the game, and then everybody's like leaving, and the guy asks the cute redhead if she wants to go on a date. That's better than in the fantasy world, you just have him asking for a date. You know what I mean? Because you're dealing with fantasy world versus real world. That's and then that would have been a payoff of like, he doesn't have to lay one on her, but he can just be like, hey,
And
you
I
wanna
bet you
go
I
out
don't even
sometime?
think of the non-fantasy world because they don't frame it that way.
I bet
You're
they
saying that's not part of the movie?
did-
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to keep up with me. I'm jumping between what the movie is and what the movie could have been, and what the
But
movie
we
could have
always,
been
we always
would have
say,
been a fun.
I mean, every movie could be better. I don't
Because
think we can
so-
say.
You gotta hold it to that standard. You got we
So-
need Patterson back, because
Right.
Patterson's all about a movie could have been better, so you should hold it to that standard. Versus
Lord of the Rings
it's
could have been better.
bullshit. Nothing could be better than Lord of the Rings. now you've
Sometimes
lost me.
Orlando Bloom doesn't have his blue
Now,
contacts in.
now you've lost me. I'm filling up more whiskey because now I'm pissed off.
I bet you they did early on, because this movie has been in development for quite some time. They've been trying to make another D&D, like actual theatrical D&D movie for quite some time. As McCurry brought up at the beginning, one of the writers for the story was Adam McKay, right? That was the name. So he was one of the writers and directors of Lego Movie. So
Adam
I
McKay
bet-
is the Dirty Sanchez or whatever. Like he's do I have the right Adam McKay? Right, who won an Oscar for he makes all those movies with he's the Will Ferrell counterpart, made The Big Short.
Yeah.
And he
That's
he wrote this, he co-wrote
No,
this.
who am I thinking? Oh, is it him? Who did Lego Movie? Now I'm getting mixed up. I'm sure people will be yelling at Lego Movie. Who directed Lego Movie? That's what I want to see.
I
The
think that
original
was
Lego movie?
wasn't that the directing team who did we just did one of their movies. Oh my god, I need to go back to the list. Where's the list?
First
Where's
Lego
the
Movie was
list?
directed by Phil Lord, Chris Miller, and then Lego
Lord
Batman.
Miller.
Oh,
Oh
he directed
no,
that. Okay.
no, I
Lord
made a
Miller.
reference to Lord Miller in a Bond.
They were going to do, they almost did sell those guys, but then Lego Batman, oh my god, I'm getting my next step because I was looking up all these people like who did these movies.
Yeah.
Because I think because it's one of the guys who wrote this movie. He had involvement with one of the Lego movies, like Lego Batman. Yes, Chris
Okay.
McKay. Sorry, Chris McKay.
Chris
I had
McKay.
last name.
Okay.
Chris
No
McKay.
relation.
Yeah,
No relation.
So Chris McKay was one of the guys who wrote this movie as well. So I bet you they probably had that idea early on. There was a fan video, like online series. I cannot remember the life of me with the name of it, where it was showing these nerds at a table, and then it would cut to their fantasy game of them playing D&D.
Yeah, what a lot.
But it'd be funny stuff like the barbarian's like, I'm gonna open this gate and rip it off, like lift it up with my strength, and he like rolls a 1, which is like a low end. So like he
Yeah.
failed. He did it. And this scrawny elf guy like, well, let me try. He rolls a what we call the nat 20. He rolls the highest on this die, and he just then cuts the fans of him just like lifting up the whole gate, ripping off its hinges and chucking it across the legs. He goes,
Exactly.
just
That's fun.
legs. It would have been fun, but
But could you do it
for 2
every
hours.
time they have to do something in the movie?
It's one of those things like it might be fun. It's like a show or a sketch thing.
You do
But
it
I
when
feel
it
like
works. You don't do it when it doesn't work. That's how this goes.
I can see that getting old after a while.
Yeah,
You
that's
get
why
kind
you got to pick your spots. You know, but overall, it would have been more of a D&D movie versus fantasy movie that
Well-
slapped fantasy movie that slapped a pre-sold property name on top of it. That's
is
my
what-
thought as an outsider.
It's just
Jeff,
other
can
shows that do the same
Jeff
thing.
as an insider, can you sell this as a D&D movie even though it doesn't have what Charlie wishes it had?
I think I could. Like both my wife also plays D&D. She's played games with me. She's helped me write some of my games, so she knows what it's like. She also said a lot of the movie felt like a D&D game, being in a campaign. The way the
Mm.
characters act, the bickering, the like, even stuff trying to find creative ways. I noticed Chris Pine never once actually has a weapon. You never see him with a sword.
He always has his loot.
He just uses the
Tax what is with the loot. That's
What is
the
a
only
loot or a liar?
whatever.
No, it's a loot,
The
right?
his
Not a
body's
liar.
a
A liar is more like a. Now
I think
I'm
they
losing
say
my
loot, but
vocabulary.
I don't know. It doesn't
Like,
matter.
Yeah, must be a
like
loot.
like the fun. So like the fact the paladin, the way the paladin acts in that movie is how a lot of people who I've seen play paladins. That's how they'll play it, and you hate the character so much because you can't do anything fun. Because I have friends who are like the Ford character, the Hugh Grant character, who are like, I'm gonna steal so much shit from people. Like you're stop it because you're like nervous they're gonna roll incorrectly. I've had a game where some of my players went into jail because they got caught and stuff.
Yeah.
So like we had to have 2 separate games happen at one point because like half of us were outside of jail and the other ones were in jail, and we were like, should we save them? Nah, why bother?
Yeah.
Like I had a character that was just outside the gates of this town playing a flute while the rest of them were in jail because they're like, why would you? And them at the table, my friends were yelling like, why would you save us? I'm like, why should I have to? I'm not in jail.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean. That's it's one thing to be like, hey, if you're into D&D, you gotta be in. And I go, I know, but like, don't you understand that joke would land if there were a group of people playing with a pizza next to them, and then you're cutting back and forth, but from a boring real world scenario to, I mean, the special effects in this movie are good, and like they're riding horses, and in the background there's amazing vistas of castles and stuff. So you're cutting between these two things, and you would have a scenario like that where a guy's like, yeah, why do I need to do that? I'm perfectly okay sitting here watching the sunset, playing my flute. That's funny. That's fun. That's engaging.
I will say, back to the special effects, the only scene I don't like actually is the Bradley Cooper scene because he just looks really bad in it to me actually. Because like I'm so used to watching Lord of the Rings where like they did all the cool camera tricks of
they did
like,
in-camera stuff.
You're like, oh, you definitely know that like they
It's
just have Bradley
definitely
Cooper. They got Bradley Cooper for
CGI.
a day to do a bunch of green screen stuff, and that's it. And they're like, all right, here's
Yeah.
your check, and here to go.
Oh yeah, it looked like maybe they had a little kid's hand and they put hair on it.
Yeah.
Like, cause he shakes her hand at some point, and they do it in like a side shot of their hands coming together to shake, and it looked like a little kid's hand with hair plastered on it, but which is good. That's a good shot because it's like in camera. But I agree. It was like
it looked weird.
Yeah, it was.
Jeff,
obvious
quick
that they'd
question.
done.
The scene where Edgin and Holga need to escape from the guards, and she takes out everyone, and Chris Pine's like, "Oh, you're asking for it now." Is that because she rolled a nat 20 and he rolled a 1, or is it the character?
She probably like, if you're thinking about it in the game terms, it's probably a case of she has a lot better attack stats. In the current game I'm playing right now with my friends, I am a barbarian. I am useless when it comes to anything like dungeon exploring or like improv with characters because I have no intelligence, but I have all the strength. So the second we go into a combat, I just become a murder machine.
Okay, so you can roll like a low number and still be really good.
I'm gonna roll attack them. All right, I get to roll like 5 dice at once rather than just one compared to everyone else. Because like
you guys are just adding to my desire that we would cut back to that.
But Jeff, as an insider, told you it was a Dungeons and Dragons movie, not a random fantasy with Dungeons
when
and
you're
Dragons
making
slapped
that
on it.
movie, you need
I
to
got
make
excited
it
because,
appeal
like,
to
So
me.
I called the animated D&D people. I saw them. I go, oh my god, I know those characters. They're from the bad cartoon from like the 80s. I recognize those characters, or like
I
the
like the guy
gelatinous
with the
cube.
hat.
I knew what the gelatinous cube was when they like that.
I
like,
only knew
show.
that because of the Disney movie Onward. You know, the gelatinous cube is a big part in that movie. So
That or the like creepy leopard thing. I've ever seen that like inside like the monsters compendium.
yeah.
Huh.
Like
And,
so,
and
like,
that's what I mean. Like
Albert has a
there are
D&D
reactions from people who are insiders of D&D, and I can on one level I can go, good for you. You have a movie made for you specifically, but if you're gonna appeal to if you're gonna appeal to me as a general audience member, not just that, it makes for a fun time to cut
So,
from something super serious to something that
compared
isn't
this-
super serious.
I
That's like
compare-
comedy 101.
I compared this movie to me like Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's just like you're having fun just watching actors have fun on set. Like you're watching like
Yeah.
you got, like that first time seeing Johnny Depp being Jack Sparrow, seeing Jeffrey Rush being Barbossa. It's like just seeing these characters have fun in this just over the top movie, over the top action. You just kind of like,
Yeah.
like my suspension of disbelief is so high right now. This is just fun to watch all this happen. That's how I felt with this movie. Like this was just fun to watch actors. It's fun to see for me Chris Pine to play fun because he is a really funny guy to see him. Like when he gets
like Chris Pine.
not be serious, because he kind of got to have that with Kirk. Like that was what's fun about him being Kirk. He was very good at that, at being Kirk in Star Trek.
Yeah.
So it's fun for him to see this be like the over the top kind of like silly, be a bard, and that's how bards are. Like they're like literally a attack as a bard is called vicious mockery.
Really?
Where the whole point is just you insult someone and that does damage to someone.
Yeah.
Because the way it works in D&D, you're like you have health, but it's not like a health part, like a I'm going to die. It's more like your motivation to live kind of thing.
Yeah. Like at this point,
Like
I understand
Padme?
I'm a broken record, but even something like that, where cutting from the table of maybe a girl who doesn't exactly like a Michelle Rodriguez who doesn't exactly reflect her fantasy counterpart, or a Chris Pine who is, you know, maybe he's like maybe he's like a football captain, but then in the game he's a bard who can't just solve problems with his fists. He's forced to use his mind to solve problems. Versus
a lot of shows already do similar things. Like Community had a whole D&D episode. You had the Freaks and Geeks episode where they play D&D, where James Franco character joins them, and he's like, what the hell is this game about? They're trying to explain to him, and then he gets really into it.
Yeah.
It's like that. The fact that you've had already shows like Critical Role.
I don't remember either of the. I don't even remember that episode. I've never seen Community, so at that point, I'm just
Community
like,
has 2 D&D episodes.
That's where I'm like, there should be, if you're gonna reboot D&D and make it appealing to everybody, you should start at that, and then from there, if you forget about that and you just continue those character stories on, fair. But so far, not a single Dungeons and Dragons movie has done that trope, and it's like screaming to be done. Screaming.
Almost like what was bad about the other D&D movies is their over seriousness about it. The fact that like everyone in the movie, it takes it. Like the reason I always remember, I saw that Dungeons and Dragons movie. I rented that movie on VHS as a kid. I still remember because I remember Marlon Wayne's character gets killed in it.
Yeah,
like it's really a weird like death. It's like he gets like a drive-by slashing, like by Python style. It's just all the guy on a horse goes, kink, he's just dead. It's like what the hell just happened? It's like, and everyone's so serious in it, and that's it works in something like Lord of the Rings, where like everyone's very stoic and very serious. You have some light humor with like Gimli at times and kind of Merry Pippin, but everyone else takes their roles in that movie very serious. Whereas D&D, like D&D games are not that serious, really. Like most of the time, everyone is being silly, ridiculous, trying to fuck with things. I had a character where I played a game that had no name because no one ever bothered asking me who I was.
Yeah.
We literally started the game and they just had me in the group, and everyone like we got like three games. So funny was, wait, what's your name? No one ever asked me.
I have no name.
And so the joke is, every time I introduced myself, it changed every time. I said a different name every time I said my name was, and my characters just didn't give a shit about anything. My friend would be going on about the DM would go on like, you see a dark shadowy figure rise from the waters, and I'm like, oh fuck, what's that? Like my character like walks up to it and starts like trying to talk to it like it's a person, and like I immediately like am breaking the tension out of he's trying to create, because I'm just been that asshole player who's trying to just fuck with the game rather than go along with his story.
Yeah. All right. So, okay, I would learn something from this segment, but I desperately have to relieve myself. Jeff, if you could, I know you already have somewhat, but if you could, with Nans, pinpoint, talk about specific D&D moments, like just insider moments, jokes that you picked up on specifically that I would not pick up on. And I'm going to leave that to you while I go visit the batch room. Got me?
Also, think about the Jurassic Park reference in the movie.
Jurassic Park reference. Did I pick that
There's
up?
a shot in this movie in D&D. Both my wife and I point out as we're watching, holy shit, that's the exact same shot from Jurassic Park. It's the dragon scene. It's when they're pulling the redhead girl off a cliff, and the dragon's below her on the ground rolling, and it comes up.
Yes, just the Velociraptor.
Yeah, and she moves her leg out the way and everything. I'm like,
Nice.
Yes.
Nice pick out.
like, oh my, well, because I have a 4-year-old who's obsessed with that movie, and she's watched
Yeah.
it like 20 times in the last 6 months.
With Jurassic Park? Yeah. And
Yes.
every single time I've ever in my life watched Jurassic Park with my family, there's one shot that no matter what always gets a vicious scream, and that's when the young girl, the young blonde girl, the kid is dangling from the ceiling, and she looks up and she screams, and they reach down and then they pull her up, and just as they pull her up, the Velociraptor jumps up and snaps at her foot, and they did the exact same thing. And I was like, you motherfucker, that's Jurassic Park.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna.
Yeah, tell me the D&D inside.
So I'm trying to think of extra stuff that either specific to this movie. I mean, I have so many random games. I've done some dumb stuff in my own games. I played as a gnome that had gnome hookers. I was basically a pimp, a 3-foot tall pimp with a stick.
But what in the movie? Like what references to D&D were there that a non D&D player would not have picked up on?
I mean, the big ones that call back was like the appearance of the characters from the cartoon series. Like that was a big one for me.
Okay.
Like I knew exactly who those were because I remember I had a friend who maybe watched a few episodes and it was awful.
Yeah.
It was just like a typical like we just need to get all sorts of cartoons out to sell stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a big one. I know the dragon is actually a dragon in the lore. Like it's from the compendium. Like I can't remember the exact name.
So
I
the
read
dragon and those leopard things.
Yeah.
Is the helm in
creatures.
like? Is that a real helm?
Because
Because you said the staff thing was the hither
staff
thither
is the
thing.
thing. There's a lot because there's lots of weapons. Like you can. There's like a book. It's just like hundreds, maybe like 1,000 different items you can.
Oh yeah,
have in the game.
she kept droning on about the axe, and I wonder if her axe thing, and it getting dropped in the lava's not in lava, but
Oh yeah, in the molten
yeah,
when they're at the blacksmith room.
or we haven't even talked about the villain in this movie. Like that villain, like what they were doing with the red gas stuff.
Yeah, like the Red Wizards, I believe is an actual thing.
Okay.
The group she was part of, because that's the issue with D&D is like a lot of creatures and classes and races and lores, those can be heavily used. Or like they kept referencing Baldur's Gate in the movie.
Huh.
To a lot of people, there was a video game, Dungeons & Dragons Baldur's Gate for like PlayStation 2 and Xbox. That was like
Yeah, I've heard of it
game.
somehow.
And I kept laughing like, oh my god, Baldur's Gate! I know exactly what that is. Charlie, do you ever remember a video game called Baldur's
wow.
Gate?
I don't.
It was for PlayStation 2 and Xbox, and it was a Dungeons and Dragons video game. And they mentioned Baldur's Gate in the movie.
What year?
Oh, this was like PlayStation 2 date. Man, you can just like,
Like 2002.
yeah, it's like Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah, the Baldur's Gate series.
And what was the context of when they mentioned it?
They just like would mention like, oh, so and so was that like when like this came like either it went to Baldur's Gate or they came from Baldur's Gate. That's that's a reference to that. Like 'cause it was a video game based off D&D stuff.
And that's what I mean. My point is,
Those
stuff
are
like that
references you guys find for
is
that.
cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate inner circle references, but I don't have those. So those are cherries on top, right?
And going back to my comparison to Pirates of the Caribbean, how it has all sorts of reference to a ride. My wife loved that movie when she was in high school, but she never once went to Disney World. So
yeah,
she never
you don't need to go on the ride to appreciate that movie because they did a really good job of making it a good movie on its own.
You can enjoy references like the dog with the keys in his mouth or something like that, and the pirates whistling the dog, or of like the scene of them like at the big Tortuga, whatever, like the pirate island they're at, where all the like people are just being tossed around. There's a guy sleeping with pigs, like that's on the ride. You get to enjoy those stuff more seeing it, knowing as a fan, but you can still enjoy the movie.
But whether that was in the movie or not wouldn't affect the overall movie, and that's the point, and that's where for me, it's like I watch a movie like this. I watch this movie and I agree. I agree that on like an overall scale, I'm like, yeah, it's a fun movie, and I've again said that from the get-go, and I'm getting the old "you just hate Goldfinger" treatment. So but it's one of those things where I think it would have been a stronger, specifically D&D movie with some D&D, classic D&D, even if it's a stereotype, some dudes, some sweaty pizza-eating dudes rolling a 20-sided die.
I think it's just been more challenging or not felt quite as original to actually do that. I know you would have liked it. I just don't think it would have helped that much with the movie. I don't think it would have made a better movie. I don't think it would have made that much made a worse movie. It's just been one extra thing to try to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah,
because
I think it would have been. For me, I think it just would have been a little more meaningful versus just fantasy the movie.
I don't want to become a situation of like Big Bang Theory.
Oh no! Fuck that! Fuck that!
Because Big Bang Theory is for moms who have kids who are like that.
Big Bang Theory is for people who like, hey, my Atari 2600 just broke. Ha 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 ha. Like, fuck that.
My parents love Big Bang Theory because they relate to it in the sense like, oh, these guys are just like nerdy, like my children are nerdy. So that's why they liked it. They thought like as their kids, like you should like this because he wears a Flash shirt just like you would do. I'm like, I'm gonna put up my shirt now. Not the.
Somehow, Jeff, you're in Nan's old position where you gotta like reset your camera.
Oh yeah, this is just a basic webcam I got.
I'm gonna pull it up.
This used to happen to Nan's a lot. Nans, are you implying we should rank this?
I personally don't think this movie has a lot of weaknesses. And I came in here thinking it should be above that Megan threshold, which I think you're going to argue it should be under. I don't know where it falls above or below Shazam, but definitely below Creed.
Let's see here. I've seen one of those movies.
So McCurdy, what have you seen? What have you seen here? Ant-Man?
I've seen John Wick.
John Wick. Okay. The only movie on this list
you didn't see Quantumania?
So the funny thing about Quantumania is the first MC movie I've not seen in theaters.
Wow.
Okay. I've seen every single one since Iron Man. That's the first one I'm like, I don't want to.
How quick do they get added to Disney Plus, which I assume you have?
I will watch it when I don't have to go to the theater and pay money for it.
Yeah.
You should watch our episode on Ant-Man rather than me repeating everything right here. But
I have a friend of mine who's like a hardcore like MCU fan. Even he like was texting me like, I saw it the second time. I fell asleep during it.
Yeah, I feel like I need to rewatch it. But Char, I'm curious. Does it beat Scream 6 for you?
Where I'm
Is
at. So
is Dungeons and
McCurdy,
Dragons Dungeons and Dragons enough to beat out Scream 6 not being Scream 6 enough for you?
McCurdy in his absence is thinking above or below Shazam, Fury
Which
of
I
the
agree
Gods.
with.
You're saying roughly the same thing, right? You're
Yeah.
saying maybe Megan. My thought was
I'm just curious if it beats Megan for you. I also agree with McCurdy, somewhere
I
above or
could.
below Shazam.
I haven't seen Shazam. From what I've heard and talked to other people who have seen it. I probably would put this movie above Shazam because like I love the first Shazam, and this new one just looked so like uninteresting.
New one was good, actually.
Okay. Where I'm at is again, I'm always going to be all about meaning, and this movie kind of robbed me of meaning at the end. And it had the fun sequences were the grave robbing and the portal stuff. Like loved me like I sat up in those moments. I love those moments.
Yeah.
But for me, my position would be number 8, right above Ant-Man.
So doesn't beat Scream.
Because Ant-Man failed similarly in its character payoffs. You know, and again, in that episode, we talked all about how, I mean, for me, that whole movie should have just been about Scott Lang and Cassie, and it should have been their adventure through the quantum realm, and that would have been the character payoff, and that wasn't there. But Scream 6 had those character payoffs between the two sisters in the way that Ant-Man did not. And with this, the scene, the heavy scene, right? Like the fun movie, a lot of fun with some hit and miss stuff. Like I said, 50% hit, 50% miss on, because this is a comedy. More than anything, this is a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And just like vague adventure fantasy stuff. But Ant-Man did not have that character payoff stuff. Scream 6 did. So you have legitimately entertaining sequences and a lot of, like the portal stuff is obviously clever. That helps beat out Ant-Man, but then Scream 6 does have that payoff stuff. And that's one element. That is one facet, right? Is that Scream is just more of a complete movie for me in that regard. Whereas that's what I mean. That's why I get annoyed when you guys say you hated this movie. I never said I hated this movie. I fucking hated Cocaine Bear, and I was very vocal about hating it. And then Plane, I was very vocal about how Plane is like just like it's literally plain, right? I didn't hate this movie.
We say
at
that because
all.
it seems like you latch on to these nothing arguments of it wasn't Dungeons and
Nothing
Dragons
argument?
enough. They could have
Fuck
been
you.
they could have done better to make it a game.
So
should have
having
hooked up with
an
the chick.
opinion about
Who
it,
cares?
wanting them to give more effort is a sin. That's why we're
No, I
here
thought this
to
game
critique
was
these things.
this
Everything's
this movie was really fun.
This is what I'm always saying about you and McCurdy are like, yeah, every movie's good. Every movie's good. I like every movie. Whereas, why the fuck should anybody listen to our opinion if everything is good? Oh, should I get in my car and leave my house where I could easily watch whatever movie of the week on Apple TV Plus and go sit with a bunch of assholes and eat shitty food and blah, blah, blah? Sometimes the answer is yes. And with this, I do. I said in the beginning, I was like, I recommend this movie. But that's not going to beat me every time. Most of the time, I'm like, no, stay home and play video games. Stay home and fuck your wife. You're going to have a better time than going to the theater.
From you, there should have been a hookup, and it should have been more Dungeons and Dragons-y. But the Dungeons and Dragons person here says it is Dungeons and Dragons-y.
No, but that's not a point for the movie because the Dungeons and Dragons guy,
but
of
that's
course,
what
is going to say
your
it is.
anti-point is that it's not Dungeons and Dragons-y.
My point is that if you're going to turn this into a movie for general audiences, it should appeal to general audiences and not just D&D folks. That.
It doesn't. I really liked it.
And I did too. God damn it! Can you hold two ideas in your head at once, Nans? I liked the movie, but I had problems with it. Repeat after me. I liked the
What
movie,
were the
but I had
problems besides it
with
wasn't Dungeons and Dragons-y enough and there wasn't a hookup?
I think I've said enough
I don't
about
think you have.
about the issues I've had with it. But I think when it comes to this ranking,
You said what you wish there was in it, but
I think when it comes to the okay, Megan had significantly more meaning to it. That whole movie and Jeff, you said you haven't seen Megan, right?
No.
You're still blurry.
I don't know. I was about that.
Yeah, whatever. Megan is all about how and you as to bring an old argument back into this, you as a parent could understand this. Megan is all about how technology threatens to overtake parenting, where someday, according to this movie, you could just throw your kids to their screens and their devices, and they will do a better parenting job than you. And, that's terrifying, obviously. Missing somewhat has a similar family theme to it. And then Scream is... I guess a decent. I mean, I have a lot of problems with Scream, but Scream has as a Scream movie is kind of weak, but as a slasher is strong. And so with this movie, it is fun. Like it is a fun.
I needed him.
All right. Hold up. This is what's gonna happen.
Is he wearing a shirt?
Don't get to talk to me.
I'm gonna mute myself.
You're muted. You're muted. Okay.
McCurdy, get your points out.
Okay, my points real quick. Charlie, you're dumb. The whole fucking idea about the fucking, it has to have kids, that's stupid. It doesn't need to have kids. The movie's great on its own. It's great. Second, the whole thing about Chris Pine. He cares about his daughter more than he cares about... You're not supposed to talk. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're muted. You don't get to talk. The whole point about him and his kid, it's because he loves his kid more than he realizes that he doesn't need to have his wife in the situation, which is what I think both Nans and Jeff were trying to get across. Your whole thing is fucking stupid and quit fucking yelling all the goddamn time. That's so dumb. That's a great part of the movie. That's why the movie works at the end of the movie.
With the ad hominems, just get to your point.
My point? You're supposed to be muted.
I muted him.
Just keep muting him. Yeah, so as far as the movie goes, I think the only weak part, or at least to me, the weakest part of the movie was the villain of this movie. I thought that was just kind of the weakest part because it's just like, she's evil, and you're like, all right, cool, that's great. But I do think the movie's really inventive. I really liked the fat dragon. I thought that was hilarious, but also fun and inventive, type of thing. I liked the graveyard and the 5 questions thing. That was fun, and that was also another D&D thing. I'm pretty sure that's a spell in DVD. D&D, is that if I'm correct, Jeff?
DVD,
right?
Yes.
DVD, D&D, whatever. So yeah, and I think all of those things combined, DVDA, right? All those things combined, I really do think it's near Shazam.
Ryan shirtless. That's all McCurry's doing.
Yes, I'm just shirtless. I'm just it's near Shazam. It is either above or below Shazam. I think that is a very.
I just want to think that McCurdy went
to have a
his wife and then came straight back.
I gotta go meet her.
My wife, and then he came straight back, covered in sweat and cum.
Wait, I got another point. Yeah, for me, it doesn't need a hook. Nans and I agree it should be above or below Shazam, and I think
I think when you're saying you wish there was a hookup, what you're really saying is you wish there was more of a moral to the story than
the moral of the story is. Here's the moral of the story, and I'll tell you what the moral of the story is.
Charlie doesn't like broken families.
No, the moral of the story is that you should take care of the things that you have in your life and let go of the things of your past, and that's what this movie is about, and that's what it tries to get across. And that's straight for most of the characters. Even Holga's whole point of her letting go of her because she still holds on to this relationship she had with the other halfling or Bradley Cooper. She ends up realizing she can let it go and she can move on with her life. And it's not so.
They
it's
all
not
have
just
an
a
arc,
Chris
really.
Pine.
Minus
Yeah, they all do have an arc.
Girl.
I think this movie's very
I don't know if
strong
she
in
has
that
one.
every character has its own arc. maybe some shine better than others, but
Yeah,
overall,
I think strong
that's
is
all
a
the good.
strong word, but yes, everybody has a thing that their character accomplished. I will give it that. Whether that is fully realized or not, I may have issue with in the details. But where I was just saying that I'm at, first off, McCurdy, come here. Come here.
No, don't touch me.
I
Oh,
love you.
trust
me. You know I love you.
You
Come here,
did
you
something
fuck.
bad. You don't touch me. Don't
You
touch
probably
me.
don't want to,
I'm
Charles. He's
feeling-
covered in
I don't
sweat
wanna
cum
touch
right
you.
now.
Dude, you without a shirt
You're on my
I
nut.
can
You're
feel
on my
your
bad
titties.
list.
Oh my god.
I came
Anyway.
back because I'm mad, and Nans called me
Good,
and
get
said I
fucking
needed
mad.
you.
Where I said, and again, guys, like we're here to find
least
the
needed a vote.
objective. We're here to find the objective placement for
sorry
the
that it
movie.
covers you
If
every
I'm in the
time, Phil.
minority, I'm going to vocalize it, and then I'm going to cater to the group because
Where,
that's where we're
but
at.
wait, where does
I said
Charlie?
8.
Where did you say?
I
you
said
think
8.
it's-
It's above Ant-Man. I think the character, the treatment of the characters,
Yeah, I think it's a much
is
better
enough for me
movie
to
than-
be stronger than Ant-Man, which should have been a better character movie, and just fucked that up entirely. But Scream has legitimate setup and payoff with this, the sisters, obviously, mostly, where the sisters, the whole thread of the sisters is that she won't let go, right? Like, you've got to stop controlling me. You're running, you're trying to run my life. And then they have that beautiful moment at the end where it's let me go. And she literally lets her go. And letting her go on top of a serial killer who's probably going to kill her, but she has to trust that her sister can take that knife and plunge it into his fucking head. That's a beautiful moment. As far as
the problem with Scream 4, the biggest problem with Scream 6 is that it doesn't it decides to not kill everybody off, and it's weak and starts. And it's like you're trying to make a stab
agree
movie
on that.
It's
Chris
better than that
Pine
movie.
has a setup and payoff. No?
I
Okay,
think
so you're
this
saying
movie
better
has
than
a
Scream 6.
thing.
What
this
about
movie
Missing?
has a
Let's
very
work our way
strong
up.
setup and payoff. I think here's the thing. It has a very strong setup and payoff with the Holga character as far as him trying to go for this goal for this amulet, trying to bring his wife back. It's something that is really he tried to cherish because he realizes that he's screwed up in his life and he's trying to make his wrongs right, basically. And so that's his whole quest. That's everything he's doing. And he thinks he's doing it for his daughter, but realized at the very end of the movie, he realizes he's just doing this for himself. And so at the end of the movie, when his daughter is like, no, like, Holga's going to die. And he's like, he looks at it and realizes I've been stupid this whole time. Holga's been your mother this whole time. I've just keep thinking my wife was your mother, and she was, but not your mother.
That's the idea.
And
that's the idea.
Yeah, and that to me is a better story.
Set up. I don't think it was
that's
set
a better
up.
story.
That's a great
than
story
Scream.
had it been set up better. That's my biggest beef with it.
I think it's great.
My biggest beef with it is again, if we just if we all just take a deep breath. That's the story. If it had been set up better, it would have had a better payoff. But even down to the nobody messes with my bug. There's a moment where so let me just explain real quick. What's the daughter's name?
Yes.
Okay, so yes has basically
It's
been
Kira.
overtaken.
Her name's Kira. Her character.
So Kira has been overtaken by Hugh Grant's character, who has basically poisoned her against her father, and she thinks that her dad's a bad guy, and he kind of is, and Hugh Grant's awesome. And then at some point, it comes down to Hugh Grant has his back's against the wall, and they're about to take all of his money. So he holds a knife to the throat of Kira, and he's like, "No, I don't give a fuck. I actually don't care about Kira. I just want all the money." And Kira's like, "Oh my God, you've been my pseudo dad all these years. How could you do this to me?" And then Holga does a thing like she throws a potato at his face, and
She likes potatoes.
are potatoes a D&D thing?
I think it's just not with the character. In this case.
So
I think it was a specific thing with the character. That was another thing that
okay.
like you missed as a D&D thing. It's just there's a lot of like very character-driven things when you're creating your backstory.
Oh, I'm
as well
sorry, I
as
didn't read
characters
the
not
fucking
liking each other.
required.
But
material.
again, that
It's
negates
all
your
movie.
stupid
Wrong with
idea.
Charles.
Again, that
I'm
negates your
so
stupid
dumb
idea
for
of
not
like it
having
needs to have
studied
these kids in
D&D
them.
for years before watching this movie. But anyway, my point being that happens, but then Holga says, nobody messes with my bug. And it was like there were all these things between Holga and Kira that were just added at the last minute. there was, as Nance pointed out, there was a last minute montage that was just like, oh, look how much she loved her and all that. And it was like kind of set up at the beginning, but then it was kind of hammered home at the end. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the material is there, but did it really pay off emotionally? I wasn't sitting there going, I was like, yeah, I'm cool with like, let her die and then we'll just like go get mom, you know.
Yeah,
And then,
I wouldn't have been cool with that. I thought that would have been a cheat of the movie, and it would have
Okay,
definitely
sure.
not gone along with the themes.
It would have
and, like,
been
that's-
not as good of an
That would
ending.
have been a really terrible ending, and I think people would have been like, "What the f? Why would
I
you
don't
do that?"
think what you guys are thinking paid off. I just
I
like
think
I
it
was sitting
did.
there
I
going,
think it worked.
"Ugh," I felt really uncomfortable as I was watching
Yeah.
Kira be like, "Don't leave me," you know, and I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah,
you know.
the thing,
Because
the
of her
thing.
acting?
Yeah,
I
that was a
don't-
big part of it. That was a big
Yeah, I
part of
don't-
it.
I didn't
don't
notice
agree.
her acting.
But
so.
that's again, like, this is why I'm like, this film really reminds me a lot more closely in the same realm as Shazam. I think it's just as full as in the Shazam.
What
but
were
I
you
do
at?
think,
Are you
but
above or below Shazam?
I think maybe below Shazam, but
Okay.
here's my reasoning: is more it's
I
less
agree.
about all the stuff that you're talking about. It's more about like going into this movie and going to talk about it before I completely wanted to rage quit because Chucky Rance was
You had to go
on
fuck
a,
your wife. I get it.
you're on a tangent. But my whole thing about this movie was that I felt like the villain, like after I left the movie, I realized like this movie reminds me a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, where it was a lot about the main characters and a lot about their struggles and journey and their inner conflicts. It's not as much about the villains. And I felt like the villains in this movie were very, very, very weak
In the background.
compared to in the background. And it was, and to be honest, it's like, again, it's another D&D thing. And I felt that because it's like, when you're playing D&D, you're really in conflict with yourselves, trying to figure out what the next plan is, what you were going to do, how are we going to get the magical item, how are we going to get past this villain, all that stuff. And so I felt like, okay, having the villain weak in the story isn't terrible, but I felt a sense of like, do I really need to know all this shit about the Red Wizards? Is there more to it other than like a brief exposition thing?
Yeah, I
So
feel
like
one
they weren't really.
hallucination is weird. Like that.
Yeah,
was,
it was just they were very
what
thin
was that?
characters. Compared to, I think Shazam has its own faults as well. However, I think Shazam has much stronger villains as far as their motivations, and they're much more charismatic. Even if Lucy Liu is like terrible, saying things like "Die, I'm on a dragon," it's still a lot more fun.
Yeah,
Like there's
yeah.
still that little sense of like, oh, like I'm the I'm the same with like this character, the paladin in this movie, where he's very stoic and he doesn't get sarcasm, and she's kind of the same
Shazam
way.
was more human. Shazam had that human element.
But like the
that I
Shazam,
wish
but I'm
this
talking
movie
about
had.
I'm talking about specifically just the villains.
I
This
think the
movie,
villains
I
are
felt
almost tacked on afterthoughts almost.
this movie, it's like, well, oh wait, we got to have villains. Okay, like Red
Super
Wizards.
villain that changes everyone
Yeah.
to
How about
undead.
everybody's gonna die?
Yeah, and it was like, and I thought that was like the weakest, genuinely the weakest part of the movie. Like, was just the villain, but a part of me is also like, I think it's like something's got to go. It's like you have a 4-leg table, and you're like, okay, one of these legs we can't afford one of the legs because we got to spend a lot of time on the other 2 legs. So one of these legs has got to go, and it's just so happened to be the villain was the one that they shortened a little bit for whatever reason. So.
All right, here's
That's
where
where
I'm
I
at.
feel.
Let me recap real quick. Now that McCurdy's back and inexplicably shirtless, nobody knows why he's shirtless, but he is. So I was saying
You
I
needed
was
to take
saying
a cold
better than-
shower after
I
leaving.
was saying, I was saying below Scream 6. I'm like this is a fun movie. This was a fun movie. You guys are saying right now, based off what you just said, below Shazam. I would argue I'm cool with that, but I would counter argue with how about below Megan? Because Megan has great human messaging, great fucking awesome theme. Megan is rocks. I think Missing doesn't have that. Missing, we all know, we all like Missing. Missing's a good movie. I think this surpasses Missing at least. And but Megan, like I agree, below Shazam, because Shazam has the human element. Even just that scene with his pseudo mom at the end. Chucky Rance almost shed a tear. Almost didn't, but almost did, right? even though I don't have the shared experience of having a foster mother. But so I think below Shazam for that reason. But I do think Megan. You could counter argue me with Megan doesn't have a complete getting to the point. The Megan threshold is that it has kind of a weak third act, and so Megan has been a threshold of if you have a solid first, second, third act, you automatically beat Megan.
I think
on that ground, it could beat Megan.
I think it does, and I think
Okay.
I think it does, and it's
I
not
prefer
just
magic
that.
fights to robot fights.
Yeah, and it's also it's not just that. I think
that is such a Nance thing to say. I just gotta like.
Charlie, I think the other thing was like, remember when we talked about Megan, one of your complaints, and we talked about how the movie, they purposely made a PG-13 version of it, and they recently released the unrated version, right? Mm-hmm. And one of your complaints was just how they showed off these death scenes, right? Like they were like, well, we didn't need, we should have not shown as much, right? Yeah, and it was just like kind of weak in that regards.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that counteracts that with Megan, I think this movie is so much more inventive with all of its magical elements that I've never seen before. And I thought that was really cool. I thought the portal was really cool. I thought, like, again, I thought the thing what we were talking about with Chris Pine singing, that was a lot of fun and kind of inventive as far as like it starts to mess up the whole everything with the portal and them trying to get in. I thought was really fun. I really liked watching a shapeshifter for once in a movie. Like I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, I don't think I've seen that style of magical character in a movie other than maybe Harry Potter, but used to the extent it is in this movie. Yeah, like there's just a lot more. There's a lot more that I left with this movie where I was like, yeah, that was a lot of fun. That's why I still think it still beats Megan. Like it just there's so much more that it's more inventive with. And I do agree. I think movie almost. I do. Yeah, it was a heist. It is a heist movie. It's a heist fantasy movie. But I do agree that like with Megan, I do agree that both these movies. I still agree that I still think that this movie has a solid like payoff. Even if you don't agree, I think the payoff is solid, and it's more about Chris Pine's character, if anything, learning a lesson. I think he does by the end of this movie.
How about this? The payoff?
I would rather rewatch D&D than Megan.
Yeah, the payoff is better than missing in Megan. I can agree with that. As much as I have an issue with that scene. And I thought it was kind of cheap, but it was. Yes, I am now.
I
with
think
you
the
guys
pieces,
that
the pieces
has
were
that
there.
Humanity to it that I like. This movie, I'm good. I'm good to lock it in at number 5.
Cool.
Yeah,
Jeff, having seen only John Wick Chapter 4, do you agree?
I agree with that. It is definitely not as good as John Wick 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm gonna let me switch over to this very complex app I paid a lot of money for called Stickies.
You're not gonna have to.
No, we are at Dungeon.
Anyway, next week Super Mario.
That'll be a fun one.
That'll be number 1.
Says, I need you all to play every Mario game from NES to Nintendo Switch.
We'll get on it right away.
So I think that's be like a couple.
Wait, Nance, you start live streaming that right away.
Yeah, you play all the Mario games.
All those games. Like, you gotta play now. Don't go to
Mario, and then Mario 2.
And bring Jeff in.
Skip, and then you gotta watch Mario 3.
No.
Okay, so Honor Among. Oh God, here we go. Ready?
It is the longest title.
You see that? Damn it.
D&D.
You gotta. Well, at some point, Charlie, you're gonna have to
just make it wider.
No, change the font size of all of the everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, eventually we won't be able to see any of it anyway. It'll be so small to fit it on the screen that it'll be not readable.
Yeah. It's gonna be at some point we may have to move. Oh, and I got to change all these. Don't mind me. Keep talking while I change all the numbers.
Anyway, thanks for coming back, McCready.
It took a lot to not.
Too.
I contemplated. I had to contemplate. I had to rethink my life. Let me just put it that way.
You're not the only person that rage quit.
Who's the other person?
Scott bailed because I wouldn't put this on screen.
How close are the characters to Diablo? Okay.
Okay.
I've never played Diablo. I don't know.
I don't
That's
think
really
anyone
a-
here has. That's why I didn't put it on screen.
I've never played Diablo. I'm sorry.
It would rely on Jeff having played Diablo and Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, how about McCurdy, when the Diablo movie comes out and you're just like me, you're like, I don't know, I'm in the dark of all this. Well, if you would have played the game, you would know that in Diablo 6, there was, if you to die and then it's people with magic, you
my
would
whole
know that they
point
would
with my whole point with you going on and on about
What'd you
that
notice,
is just simply this, is that your whole argument was like, this movie should have been basically Jumanji, and I'm like, it doesn't need to be Jumanji. It
No,
can
it
just
doesn't need to be. But
it could
should
just
have
be
been.
what it was, and I think it works. And you were like going on about like, oh no, we should have had kids, and then they're playing this game. But I'm like, it does that stuff only works if there's some legitimate thing outside the like. Yeah, sure, they could have wrote that story where like they go into the game and then the characters in the game come in the real world. I've seen that story a million times. I thought this was more inventive, and I liked all the creative ways that they use the world rather than being like, oh, they're playing D&D. I'm like, yeah, if I want to play D&D, I'm gonna go play D&D, and then
I just like knowing
bang
that
my
you'll be
wife.
so hot that you have to take your clothes off.
I was about to go to bed. So
I mean, this is, you guys do
Sure.
Mario.
and then
it's
Mans
never-
is like, we're almost done. I need you. And I was like, all right, fine, I'm coming on.
Yeah.
Go to bed.
Anyway,
Tell you
okay,
why.
we are agreed at Dungeons and Dragons now in the top 5. Honor Among Thieves now in the top 5. Megan has been pushed out. Jeff, if you ever want to come back, dude,
Just
hit us
watch
up.
all of these movies.
Yeah,
then
you got to
come
watch
on
all
back.
these movies, but hit us up. It's always fun bringing in. Well, we may or may not have somebody joining us next week for the same reason, because he may or may not be an expert in Nintendo games, I guess.
He's an expert in things. He's read books.
He's an expert in living in basements and playing video games, which we've all been
He
there.
did that. He did do that. So
We have all been there. So
yeah.
As right now,
Um,
on here, you're kind of the guy who started what Nintendo Club initially in high school.
Oh
yeah, we've all been
Yeah.
there too. Okay, so but Jeff, real quick, because we have an initial thought. Every episode we do a toast to somebody in the movie who was exceptional or at least acceptable. Do you have somebody in mind? And I'm curious if it lines up with who we have basically as default, because kind of following along with what I've said about this movie, there isn't really anything that shines about it other than it being just fun. Who would you say?
My first thought just goes to Jonathan, because Jonathan really should have been here for this.
I agree.
Jonathan.
Our thought was Chris Pine, but now that you say it, I do think I would be okay with switching this to. Was it
How about
Jonathan
all
or
the fantastic
Jonathan?
Jonathan?
Jonathan.
I can't
But
remember.
like, so it was like all the characters had normal names, but then a slight weird twist to it. And I think one of the writers or something was a Jonathan's something or other.
The director is Jonathan.
Okay,
Yeah, Goldstein.
Okay.
Jonathan was awesome.
Well, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to do Chris Pine? Because
I think I
Chris
think
Pine's always
Chris Pine
awesome.
is the movie that makes this movie work.
I think he really does.
because-
I
he was
agree.
great in
Because
it.
the thing is
I
like
agree.
the first Dungeons and Dragons movie, like I had to tell you, like, yeah, Justin Whalen. You guys are like, who? The guy who played Jimmy Olsen. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
But like to have someone like Chris Pine lead this movie, and then by the way, the character that he plays in the game is he plays a bard, which like in the game that's a guy who just plays a flute or a lute. You know, that's not
Yep.
that's not what you would expect. Like us all playing Zelda is like, oh, you know, playing somebody like a Link or like having a sword or being a fighter or something like that. This guy is he's a guy who has plans and he plays the lute, like, and he pulls it off beautifully.
I think that when it comes down to it, and that was why for me, I as soon as I left the movie, I just kept landing on Mr. Pine Tree here, because I was like,
yeah,
without
there was-
him,
yeah.
there, like, he has that star power. He's one of these, like, there are a few actors who every time they land in something, they're there because they have what we collectively call star power, because no matter what he's in, people are going to be interested because he's a charming, talented motherfucker. So
Yes.
whatever, and like even down to the opening scene, and McCurdy and I personally kind of touched on this briefly, where that opening scene was like a perfect script, like from a script writing standpoint, it was perfect so far as it was how do you provide backstory. We had a little brief moment where it opens up on a like a Game of Thrones style winter prison, and a guy is like put in the prison, and then he ends up in jail with Holga and Chris Pine, and but overall, everything from the beginning, Chris Pine just kind of anchors the whole thing with his charisma. He's just everything he does. There's a reason why they pay him top dollar to take whatever franchise movie to the next level, because if he wasn't in this movie, it just wouldn't work as well. It just wouldn't.
No, I don't think so.
Just wouldn't. So
Yeah.
it has to go to
No,
Chris because he's the man. But he used Jarnathan or whatever for a really like legitimately hilarious moment where the whole thing
And it
is
got
that
that hilarious moment got a payoff
yeah,
at the very end of the movie, which I also thought was great.
like a bookend of a joke where
Yeah.
he like so just real quick, hit the whole thing is like how to like in any given movie as a screenwriter is like how do you tell the audience the backstory of your character? Well, they have him stand up in front of a parole board and give his life story so that maybe they'll give him a pardon, and he tells it so well because he's trying to bide for time so that one of the judges, I guess, will show up, and Jarnathan, who happens to be a winged creature that he can grab and then smash out the window so they can escape. But in trying to like stall for time, he tells it so lovingly and so beautifully that they give him the pardon,
Yes.
therefore counteracting why he was stalling for time in the first place. Like, I love shit like that. That was just like that immediately made me like this movie. I know I gave this movie a lot of shit, but that's always going to be me being very critical. But it is a fun movie, and at the end of the day, all four of us recommended going to see it. So you should go see it. You should support Mr. Pine Tree, and right now we're going to toast to him because he's just solid gold. Anybody have anything else to say, or is my man crush good enough?
You've talked enough for all of us and more.
Yeah.
Good. Jeff, thanks for joining us. We can't
Thank
see you
you.
because Chris has covered your face.
No, wait, hold on.
What?
Hold on. There we go. Boom.
There you go.
Hey, there I am.
All right. Bye, Jeff. Go back to Chris. Go back to Chris. All right. Good night, everybody.
All right.
Night.
Good night.
Cheers to Chris.